Order the May 14th meeting of the Planning Board. It's a little after 6 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank everyone for showing up tonight. This is outstanding. This is what we love, is having community here to watch us, to listen to what goes on in the process, and to be part of it. So for everyone that's here, we truly welcome you. Appreciate your time and effort. We've got a full agenda this evening, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First, we'll do an introduction. This is the Boothbay Harbor Planning Board. My name is Michael Tomko. I'm the chair. My other members here:
John Hochstein,
Chris Swanson,
Andy Shepard, Tom Churchill.
Right, and we've got Jeff, our code enforcement officer. Just as a matter of procedure, when we go through the applications, if you guys have any questions, and we'll make sure that everyone has ample time to have their questions to be stated, please go ahead and address them through the board, and we'll make sure to do our best to get answers to you. And with that in mind, why don't we go ahead and start off. This evening we've got 4 applications in front of us. We've got the 8 Wharf Street property, we have 10 Commercial Street, 359, I'm sorry, let's see, 93 Townsend, and the 1 Howard Street. So with that in mind, let's keep things in order. We'll start off with the 8 Wharf Street property. Who's representing? And when everyone, just for benefit of our record, when you address the board, just give your name so that we make sure that we get it accurately reported in our minutes. Okay? Great.
Hi, I'm Adam Maltese. I'm with Knickerbocker Group, and we're representing 8 Wharf Street Inc., or LLC, Dr. Roland.
Adam was before the planning board last month to do a pre-app, just to give some general information, ask for some input. Since that time, they've submitted a formal application, and I guess maybe Adam, if you could walk us through the scope of the project, what's intended to be done, and then we'll go ahead and start to see what questions there are about it, okay?
Okay. So the project is going to be 8 Wharf Street, which is, it's as you're looking at Wharf Street and the byway come together, or the best way to see it is McSeagle's. Hold this up. McSeagle's. This picture is taken from the wharf, basically between the ice cream factory and McSeagle's entrance. This is the subject property. It's looks like it's an older warehouse type structure with a smaller add-on that had been done out on Wharf Street some time ago, and then it has later infilled, and all of this stuff we think is at least 50 years old.
Would you rather show the board so that the board can see it too, or
you know what? We'll do a little sharing.
I think everything we brought today is in the packet.
Sure.
So if you want to go to that sheet, as Adam goes through, you can name the boards that you're showing the public, and then you can find it in the packet. Just
the idea is that we would try to pull down this building that exists now in its entirety, and then reconstruct a structure that basically takes this eave line, it's the eave line on the byway side, and extends it all the way around to Wharf Street. And the idea is to try to match some of the facades that are already shown on Wharf Street. Wharf Street has a very unique series of facades, and this last building, you can see the existing building doesn't really match in with that very well. And we're trying to bring that sort of into some unity and really provide a bookend for Jansen's on the other end of the block. Which is a very nice building.
Beautiful.
So the next board is the proposed board. This is a schematic that we did, schematic perspective that we did of the street elevation from that same perspective point that I just showed. You'd be looking from the entrance to the wharf, back up Wharf Street and back up the byway. This is that long facade of the byway, sort of faces the candy shop and the cannery. This faces more down the wharf. The Wharf Street elevation has an existing sidewalk that we would keep in place, and actually the idea is to tear out the wood sidewalk and replace it with a stone or concrete surface. and sort of continue the railing very similar, but further down the block, there's this steel railing. The idea is to sort of go off that same height. The front elevation is, again, trying to really make a bookend to the Jansen's block, have the same sort of feeling and have the same presence that building has. Another sort of interesting feature of this block is trying to create an upstairs or a balcony on the roof deck to give people, residents or renters of these 2 second floor suites, a place where they can enjoy the view a little bit. These spaces are pretty landlocked by the street, and this is really one of the only views from the structure out to the water. This last section of roof here is basically undeveloped. We have it shown as a green roof. It's up for some discussion as to whether or not that's going to be a green roof or whether it'll be a more traditional roof. But the idea is really to present a nicer rooftop view to the people who are actually over this space at the bistro. Exactly, because the bistro looks right down into this building. Let's see. So that basically describes the perspective. Next, going through the plans, the idea is to expand the existing use. The existing use is a retail space, commercial space. The idea is to keep the first floor basically the same. Try to clean up the entrance to the space. We would keep the sidewalk entrance here. Try to make this entrance a little bit more public friendly, and try to make this entrance a little more public friendly as well. This, if you can think of that space downtown. Here's a. Now we're going to the survey of the lot. If you're coming from the wharf, it's really traffic. Foot traffic is directed up the sidewalk, past the Lewis Law. But there is also a lot of foot traffic that's going to want us to start to work its way up this side of the street, the north side of the street. So we're trying to really clean up this entrance and make it a little more appealing, a little more pedestrian friendly. So, and then for handicap access, we actually don't have the space available here to get a decent handicap ramp. And on this side, and even if we were, the street entrance is pretty difficult. Bringing a chair down Work Street and then sort of maneuvering your way onto that ramp would be rather difficult. So we're aiming to position this floor system basically on grade with the section of the byway adjacent to the billiard hall. Sorry, the bowling alley. There's a field bowling alley. So there'd be handicap access at that point onto the sales floor.
Hey, Adam, just so
Sure.
us on this side, I just want to make sure that we're understanding the handicap access is going to be from the,
On the north side?
yeah,
Yeah.
right on the byway area.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's actually, if you're looking at the plot plan, handicap access would be through this side from the north. It's actually the entrance could either be someone walking down the street this way, or again walking across the byway.
Okay, thank you.
So the next floor, the second floor, actually I'll move these boards around a little bit. So now we're going to the second floor and roof plan. So second floor, the idea is to expand the use to a duplex. We'd have the idea is having 2 small suites. One of them, 1-bedroom suite with a den that might be used as a occasional second bedroom, and the other one's a single bedroom suite, a studio. One of to gain access to that second floor and to give some visual interest as you come up the staircase. This staircase is the entrance from, actually I should move this over. So the entrance to the apartments are off the Wharf Street side, on the high side of Wharf Street. And then you take a couple steps up into the entry, or into the foyer, and then come up onto the second floor. In that second floor space, there's a sort of an open courtyard that is a light well. It also provides access to that roof deck area. Common hall between the two units, and then a single entrance to the studio, and a single entrance to the one bedroom. Going up the staircase from the light well onto the roof deck, there's a roof deck. We've drawn a hot tub and a small table, a series of flower boxes to really limit foot traffic to this one section of the foot deck, or the roof deck. The open roof section, and again, this is still up for some discussion and some revision, but right now the open roof is really an ideal place to put mechanical, whether it's condensers for air conditioning or heat pumps or that sort of thing. And again, it's protected from the street view, and street producing noise on the street by these parapet walls that actually surround the second or the roof. And the last thing I guess is the we have a small balcony here that looks up the byway, looking almost due north, and should create some street interest as you're coming down the byway. Seeing that balcony with its adjacent doors. And that basically sums up the construction.
Do you want to go through logistics at all? And so, I mean, obviously we recognize that putting a new building in the harbor is going to be a challenge because it's a very developed area. The streets are narrow and the building would be built all new from the ground up. And so we put a lot of thought into the logistic piece, but we're also here to gather comments from people, hear what the concerns are so we can make sure that we address it in any of the plans that we put together. Also, Eric Martin's here. He's the contractor, general contractor, who's working with the client in the preliminary phases. So if it comes to construction, logistic questions, we thought it would be best if he could be here too to help talk about how this would be done. Adam's put together a schedule, as well as some ideas of how circulation could happen as a starting point. So,
Danielle and Adam, maybe first off, let's see if the board has any questions just
on the building.
Yeah,
itself.
on the structure itself.
Okay.
And then we can look at timeframes and.
Okay.
So we've got the application's changed a bit from the information that you presented last time. We've got area and volume calculations as well, and because this is part of shoreline zone, you've met the requirements of the expansion. Talk a little about the change that you've done for the access. I know you've moved the entrance for the second floor area, out of what was like a street entrance before, and now you've got it protected. Any thoughts about the rear entrance that's off of a street and it's also off of a parking lot, but it also looks like that's covered by the upper roof, so someone's not necessarily stepping out, especially disabled, into traffic?
Yeah, that's correct. So in the previous, in the earlier revision, we shared with the board the apartment entrance had been down in this area, and actually the entrance was coming out of basically the area where this window is now. One of the concerns that the board had was that a child, let's say, running down the staircase, running out that door, would have no sort of prior warning to running right out into traffic. Someone coming around this corner might not be able to have enough time to stop for that pedestrian. Another concern was drawing people sort of across this area towards that entrance. We tried to, for a number of reasons actually, we tried to eliminate some of the access issues by moving the entrance back here onto the sidewalk, so that the entrance is actually, you have the sidewalk to actually sort of buffer you from traffic. You also have the sidewalk to sort of, someone coming downstairs can orient themselves on the sidewalk before they have to step off into traffic. And it actually makes easier access from walking further down the street, coming back into the sidewalk from this direction. It gives you better access to the duplex. Plus, it moves all of the service of the utility aspect of the staircase moves away from the good side, or on the good side of the building, and towards the shared wall between it and the Christmas shop. The other benefit too is again sort of an increased uniformity on this wall. This wall now becomes very uniform and very measured with its rows of windows.
Two questions. First, on the second floor.
Sure.
Are these short-term rentals or are these year-round rentals? Is it a
that's-
hotel or is it a permanent residence?
I think that's yet to be determined. At this point, we're going under the assumption that it's going to be duplexes, so it'd be a longer-term rental. But again, we're not entirely sure of what that.
Second question, given the rooftop, has that in fact been taken into consideration in the calculations of the expansion?
Yes, it has. Yeah, and the way we did it was in any area volume calculation. Volume tends to be the more sought-after commodity, especially when bringing a building of this era up into sort of modern standards, going with a 9-foot.
It's both, yeah.
It's both. It's both volume and or square
yes.
footage.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, both volume and square footage have
So
been
the
calculated.
the full square footage has been added into the 30% calculation.
That's correct. That's correct.
Of the deck area, so are you meaning this roof deck area?
No, the whole
There.
deck, the whole,
Yeah,
Yeah.
to clarify what he might be asking.
I see. So the open roof area, we're considering a space that is not actually habitable or not usable by the general public.
Similar
but you have not finalized the plan.
Similar to the green roof area, so that.
Well, the green roof, that's not necessarily finalized either.
Right, it could be a green roof, that's true.
So should we not count the entire area in the calculation?
It's a good question. I mean, we've looked at this as if you have a roof and you have access, and if you have access to a certain area, you know, that counts as a part that you're allowing people to go up there. Certainly if you have mechanical equipment, you have kids up there, you
Right.
wouldn't want them to go there.
But what
Our
exists
proposal is
today
to
could be
separate it.
expanded tomorrow. So hence, conservatively, could we take a look at what the calculation will be if the full area is included?
Yeah, and you could certainly change the, you know, like with the green roof or with some other texture or a certain slope, you could change the, either the material or the height of the slope to make it less friendly. You know, whereas you go up and there is a deck here that has 4-foot railings, they could certainly come up with a design technique that would prevent them from accessing it. That, I think even the green roof area, whether or not it was green roof, might be inaccessible just because of the change in elevation.
Oh, I'm not questioning that, that's a
Yeah,
separate
okay,
issue, the
sorry.
safety issue.
Yep.
But the square footage calculation for purposes of falling within the expansion limitation
Okay.
of 30%.
Yes.
Yes.
And those figures I haven't seen.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's
Got it.
That's actually this. So inside the package, there's a narrative. The narrative sort of walks through each of the concerns sort of raised by the permit. So we sort of address each one in order, or tend to address them in order. So a brief rundown of the area volume calculations. We had McConnell and Associates. McConnell and Associates do area volume calculations for the existing structure. And what they came up with was first floor, 1,412 square feet, second floor, 880 square feet, exterior decks, and 198 square feet. The deck is actually one of the very few places on the entire structure where we're outside of the shoreline. There's actually about 6 cubic feet of the actual building outside of the shoreline. This building is really right in it. The existing volume above ground is 20,410 cubic feet. Basement over 6 feet, interior height is 1,700 785 cubic feet, and a total, so that's a total of 22,195 cubic feet. Expansion by 30% of a 2,763 square feet gets us to 3,592 square feet. The expansion of the volume of 22,195 gets us to 28,854. The proposed building, crawl space would drop to 0. It would truly be a crawl space, about 4 foot or something in that range. First floor is going to stay at that same 1,412 square feet, or 14,175 cubic feet. That gives about a 10-foot floor to floor. Second floor, 1,441 square feet. And of that, if you look at the light well actually punches some volume out. Again, volume is one of those things that it's very easy to gain square footage, but when you're when you're gaining square footage and you're trying to raise the ceiling as well, you start to lose volume. So we have this extra square footage. We're using some of it here, and then removing that volume from the structure. So that gets us again this 1,441 square feet. 1,347 of it's enclosed. That gives us 14,679. Again, about 9'6" or something like that, floor to floor. And then the roof, the remaining square footage goes to the roof deck. That's about 739 square feet with no volume attached to it. 739 square feet, again, just doing some rough math in my head. That's 73 or 74 feet by 10-foot strip, or a 35 by 20. So,
But if you count the full area, it'd be well over 1,000.
No, the whole area of that space, I believe, so 18 times 34, is that right? 22,600, is that right?
No, my question, just back to the original question, if you take the full amount of the space, whether you're going to use it for this or that, what is that number? I don't believe it's 700 feet.
John, you're talking about the trapezoid. Right?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
Yeah, so I think he's trying to say all of this area.
How much is that?
How much
And then
is that
does
as
that
roof
still bring
area?
you within 30%, or do you go over?
Well, if they try to have a big floor area, usable space on the entire roof, then yeah, that would be over.
Okay,
You know, so
could we
his
answer the
proposal-
question with a specific
I don't-
answer with the
What's
number?
the first floor? Do you know?
Whatever it is.
First floor is
I think if you go
right
back
here.
to your roof plan, it shows what
right here.
his calculations are based
So
on.
first
right
floor
here.
is 1,400. And
Yeah.
how much is the entire deck area?
It would be
1,400.
Right here,
Should be the
right,
same.
right what's submitted in there. The roof deck is 739 square feet.
No,
That's the
it's not.
rectangle.
That's the deck.
It's not.
So, you know,
It's not
that's
the
the deck.
entire, it's not, in other words, it's not this entire
Right.
space.
Right.
It's
It's
just-
actually a little bit bigger than the space that's shown here.
And that's
Yeah,
all
if-
that you're considering in
Yeah.
terms of,
In terms of
Right.
habitable
And-
space,
and
habitable
it's
space
fine,
that
and you're welcome
meets.
to disagree with that. I mean,
But
that's an
should
interpretation we
we
talked
consider
about.
the entire, I'd just like to
Well-
see the calculation.
Yeah,
You may
no.
be within your 30%.
No, it would definitely,
No.
if you included the whole thing, I mean,
You would
the
not
entire
be,
roof,
right.
you would not be.
That's right.
obvious.
And we.
But the idea is the approval that you're seeking would not be for the entire roof.
That's right.
Any more than, you know, if someone built a house and,
And I'm only going
Got
to use half the
approval.
first floor? Come on.
well, but you're not going to use
I
the
don't plan to
roof.
use the rest because it's not finished, but I
Yeah,
can
you're not
finish
going to use
at
the
a later
roof
date.
if you don't have the approval for the
And
roof.
that does certainly happen all the time when you have a second floor, like a cape, where you have a 4-foot knee wall, and everything behind the knee wall is within the eaves. You know, there's situations where there's just spaces that are accessible and spaces that aren't accessible. And that's what we interpreted the calculation to be based on.
So-
It's a usable space, livable space. Certainly welcome to disagree with us, and we could get a, you know, Terry Layton knows a lot about how to do this. He does it all the time for us, and we could give opinions on that. But our intent was to say, this is where the stairs are going to come up and they're going to use this area. And we're going to make it so they can't use these areas, either through materials, through design, through barriers. You know, we'd use some means in which those would not be part of the livable area of the space. So, but it's open, you know, we're here for discussion, certainly.
okay, so for purpose of discussion, First, second floors are all counted. The only part of the roof is what's called the proposed deck. The other areas are not
That's right.
part of the calculations.
Yep.
Okay. You were finished with the expansions. Did you want to go ahead and finish off and mention about the setbacks and the, just as part of your list of criteria?
Sure, yeah, in terms of setback, we're utilizing almost the exact same footprint of the existing building. And the building is actually quite tight to the lot. The existing lot line, and this is again going back to the McConnell survey, the existing property lines straddle a alleyway that runs between our building and the Jeep LLC building. It then extends out to Wharf Street, continues actually just inside what is now the existing wood sidewalk structure. Then comes back, it actually protrudes again outside of the building envelope onto the byway, but only by 6 inches or so, and then runs just inside the property line along the byway and then returns back. So in our new proposal, we're trimming this corner off to sort of square it up a little bit, pull it back inside the property line. We're actually pulling the sidewalk back away from Wharf Street a little bit to give us a 5-foot sidewalk, and we're keeping this property line basically the same. We're also rotating this. It's a funny little wall back facing up the byway. We're actually rotating that back to square up the building and to also provide, as you mentioned, provide a little alcove to gain entry to that space without feeling like you're having to walk out into traffic.
Adam, that sidewalk isn't a municipal sidewalk, that's private property, right?
That's correct.
So while you could have expanded out onto that, you chose not to, and to maintain the sidewalk across the front.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. You mentioned about lighting and signage.
Lighting
structure?
is going to be pretty minimal, and again, some of that might be determined as the working drawings are put together for the property, but we have no plans at this point for any intensive lighting. All lighting should meet the code requirements.
Okay.
Signage is, again, we've shown a sort of very small sign on the front, but I can't imagine there'd be a lot of signage again required for this structure. As for the upstairs duplexes, again, be no more than just a couple of a street number. That's right.
Okay. And in terms of parking, you're not taking away any spaces, you're certainly not adding any either.
That's
It's
correct.
downtown Business A, which means there is no parking requirement.
Yeah. And we had looked at the owner's request. We looked at some parking underneath the building, but it became too much of a logistical exercise. It just between elevating the building, losing square footage, and then approaches became just unworkable. There's just not enough space down there.
Anything about your height, your elevations?
Yeah, elevation is so based again on this on McConnell survey, we have an average elevation existing right now of average elevation of 12.54 feet above the hat line, and we're allowed, I believe, 30 feet in this, 30-foot maximum elevation in this district, plus a 6-foot facade. And that's, again, similar to the other buildings that are on the street. We don't plan on using the full 30 feet plus the full 6. This is actually going to be a bit less than 6. Actually, probably more in the 36 to 42 range. But we want to, in our application, we've actually asked for the full 6 in case, as the design develops, slightly in the construction documents, we want to put some kind of cap on that, or pediment or something on that facade. We'd like the ability without having to resubmit.
So the average maximum height of your building
Oh, sorry.
is,
That's off of this.
we're gonna say that the highest is 34, a little over 34 feet?
Elevation.
Highest elevation, yeah.
So
So
minus the existing is,
minus 12.54 gives us a proposed maximum height of 22'6", or 22.6, which is 22 foot 3/4 from grade to the highest point of the roof along the L2 property line. And the L2 property line is this, actually. Property line here. So that sort of sets the height. Again, 2206 plus 6 gives us 28. And again, well under the 36 rule.
Okay, so 34, a little more than 34 feet, and does that include the 6-foot, the potential 6-foot facade?
well, the 34 is the elevation, so the overall height's 28 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
it's,
He put
sorry.
it in terms of elevation, so elevation 34, but then the ground is elevation 12 and a half. So the overall height of the building is 22 feet, and then the 6-foot facade puts it at 28.
That's correct.
So even with the facade, it's under 30. Which
Okay.
I think it's 30 feet is the maximum height with a 6-foot
That's a 6.
facade.
That's correct.
Right, yeah. So I think it was a little confusing in the application because he used elevations.
Got it. Okay,
Exactly.
so 28 feet, roughly the highest, if you go the full 6 feet. And right now, the existing maximum height of the white building is, didn't I see it was like 22 or something like that?
That's correct, yeah,
Okay.
the existing structure right now, it's actually.
With no facade. yeah.
Right.
That's
So if
right.
somebody's standing there on the street today, looks at it and says, maximum that I'm going to see above the existing line is going to be another 6 feet.
Right, from the facade.
That's-
yes.
And maybe less than that if you choose not to go with the full 6-foot facade.
That's correct. And to
Sorry.
give you an idea, like on the street view of what that point is, it's actually, that point right there is the highest point. This roof actually pitches back and up, so that point right there is the highest point of the building. And that whole back section of the building is all at that same height.
Do that one more time on this way?
Oh, sure.
For us, sorry.
Yep. No, that's okay. It's this point right here.
Okay.
This roof actually pitches down towards the byway,
Got it.
ever so slightly. So again, that's the highest point there. It kind of, the facade comes across straight, but the actual roof pitches.
Okay.
And again, it sets that, it sets this property line, and it's the property line facing up the street, the Christmas shop. That is the, again, the existing highest elevation.
Okay. The last thing in here about the structure is about the fire marshal considerations.
Yep, we've met with the fire marshal. The building will be sprinkled, and that actually sort of solves a lot of complications for us. It actually sort of took care of a lot of the concerns he'd had about egress. One of his concerns was egress from this space. We have a means of egress, but we didn't have a means of escape. But once the building is sprinkled, one means of egress is fine for the roof deck. He had a concern as well about handicap access, but again, once he reviewed the site and we tried to quickly scheme up a way to get a ramp to that front door, and it really is unworkable. There just isn't enough property to get that ramp to work fine. And there is an exemption in the law for having less than 50% of your entrances be accessible in situations like this. So.
What's this selection of materials that are going to be used for the finishing of the building?
Right now, it's shown as we have a brick facade on the Wharf Street and on the byway, on the first section of the byway side, and then clapboard or shingle on the remaining two faces. The adjoining wall has to meet a 2-hour, we believe it's a, and this is one of the things that the fire marshal was unable to answer when he was sitting there, because he had to actually go to a different code section. But it would be a 2-hour wall separating this building from its adjacent buildings. And this alleyway right now is basically inaccessible. It's maybe a foot and a half wide. So just in terms of maintenance, future maintenance, it makes sense to have that be a concrete block wall or something that's parched.
How about the skeleton of the building? Is it going to be conventionally framed? Is it going to be steel and concrete?
What we've talked about so far is steel and concrete. The sprinkler system really does away with a lot of the construction concerns that the fire marshal had. Originally, we needed a 2-hour separation between first and second floor, but with a sprinkler system, that drops to 1 hour, which can be met with conventional framing. At this point, it looks like the quickest way to build it, and I'll actually, Eric can comment as well, but it looks like the simplest way to build it will be a steel and concrete structure.
Okay.
With wood framing infill.
Okay. I think that about exhausts the construction side of it. Does the board have any other questions for Adam or for
Yes.
Danielle about construction?
Thank you. No, I want to go back to the discussion of the rooftop because the previous conversation left me somewhat confused. I came here tonight thinking that you had maxed out the 30% expansion in volume and square footage by including the roof deck space as 739 square feet, which I took to be the entire non-green area. But at a couple of points, you pointed to the western section with the
That's correct.
with the hot tub and described that as being the only part that contributed to the requested living space. So would you please, just for clarification, point to 739 square feet on that drawing?
And again, these drawings are, and these drawings are pretty crude. But again, once we get to a construction set of documents, we're going to be able to.
Could you face us, please, so we can see, looking at your back?
So the idea is that,
Or maybe go on the other side, so that your back is not between us and the drawing.
this aside. So, so again, given this this footprint, this is the entire second floor shown. This section is the green roof, and again, no railings, and again, really sort of a non-habitable space. The idea is that this space from here to here, and again, it's not necessarily drawn at 700, and this is actually considerably less than 700 feet, the 739
39.
feet.
I believe the 739 extends all the way across that rectangle to the eastern boundary.
It's pretty close. We during our initial calculations, didn't use all of that space, just because we didn't think we would have that much space available. So again, the idea is to exhaust that last remaining square footage that we have available, and bring this sort of inner partition down until we've sort of used that space, so that we can maximize the square footage on the roof deck.
So as an action item, would you take it as an obligation to redraw that, showing the fully exploited 739, where that barrier would be, and what the architectural consequences of using the full 739 would be? Because I suspect that the owner wants to use the full 739, and I don't think that drawing accurately reflects what the end state would be.
And we tried to show it this way too, as a worst case, that it could be two pieces this way. You know, it might stretch 3/4 of the way, and we were trying to make the point, because until we do the architectural development drawings, you know, they're schematics right now, and so we try to be very generous and say, this is how each floor might work out, and even though it might fill the whole thing, which would be great, the client would love it, he may not be allowed to do that. So we tried to show that there could be required a barrier system that goes around a livable area, a non-accessible area, for discussion, and hopefully, you know, he gets to conserve space on the designing of these 2 floors, and he gets enough to make that whole thing work. But if not, what would we do, or what would make you guys happy if it were, you know, segmented, where there's 2 areas of the roof that are inaccessible and 1 area of the roof that is accessible?
So let's have that conversation after you comply with my request to show where the 739 would come to?
Yeah, we can do it now based on your design as we have today.
I would think that, I mean, some things that may drive the positioning of the space up there may be the location of the mechanicals. They may have to be on the,
Right. There certainly is a way to do it.
sure.
And that was our assumption that I mean, we don't have a space in the crawl space that we're comfortable with putting a great deal of mechanical equipment for this building. And likewise, there is no other space for mechanical equipment. It really has to be rooftop mounted. And the idea of mounting it here, where it's again right in the sight line of the bistro's rooftop, that didn't appeal to us at first. So I mean, this really becomes the ideal space for that boneyard, for that sort of sea of condensers and air handlers and all that equipment. I mean, that really is the prime spot for it.
And similarly, if you did have a little usable area there, you'd want to have a good enough or strong enough sound barrier that you're not feeling like you're sitting next to mechanical equipment. So that piece that divides the spaces is something we look at really carefully, not just for access, but for sound and just enjoying it on the deck.
Any other questions about structure for right now from the board?
Can you give us a little more information about what you see as a green roof?
Yeah, and that's, this was a idea that was floated out early, and they're becoming certainly more popular. The idea being that it's a truly waterproof roof system, then decked over with a layer of it can be everything from ballasted stone to a man-made mesh, and then topsoil brought in, an actual sod planted on the roof surface itself. It's something that's it's a schematic idea that we've not fully developed yet, but the idea is that it would be an option that would certainly give the owner, again, a way to sort of set this building apart, as well as, again, provide sort of a better rooftop view than you would get from a black UPDM roof.
And what is the access to that area?
The access to that area would have to be, again, over this parapet wall. We have, at this point, sort of a small railing system shown here. That railing system could extend far enough to gain access to that roof space, but that roof space would really be, it's uninhabitable space. It has no railings. It's considered a...
Is it the same or lower,
It's, as is drawn now, it's the same as the roof deck elevation. But to get to it, you'd again have to cross this parapet wall that separates the two.
Which any self-respecting teenage boy should be able to do. So in order to avoid building an attractive nuisance, I suspect the separation of the gray rectangle from the green trapezoid would have to be via a 6-foot wall with a door, a lockable door probably coming out of the utility space where you would keep your lawnmower into the green trapezoid. But all of that can be discussed more later when you have a fuller, or a more fleshed out, thank you.
The reason
description
that's
of the
relevant
rooftop.
is that if there is any subsequent expansion,
Well, there can't
If
be
it
any more
allows-
expansion, because it's only 30%.
well,
They're doing the maximum right now.
that may be, but how would anybody know? You don't need a building permit to move a wall on top, do you, Jeff?
Yeah.
Well,
Or to put a
to
gate
move
in
a wall,
there?
no, but to create a deck, yes.
Well, the deck already exists.
Right.
already
What you-
exists
what-
once you
What
start.
would be approved would be an area that could be completely covered in deck. Anything above and beyond
How
that.
then do you prevent and assure that there will be no expansion that does not have to be brought back because it would encroach on the 30% lifetime limit?
I would rely on neighbors to alert me to construction.
bistro, yes?
Well, and that's,
Yes, I have a feeling I would find out about it.
and just for sake of argument, a green roof doesn't mean a grass roof. That's not gonna necessarily be
It's typically
a sod roof. It can be,
sedum or blackberries or some sort of small bush that, or.
It's not going to be
that-
hot mop that's painted green.
Yeah, and you can't, usually you don't mow them, they're just, a planted area.
Nor is it a foundation for a volleyball court.
That's
Right.
Which could be
But they
fun.
are, they're
Okay.
expensive, and we've spec'd them before and have not, I don't know that we've seen them done built, because it requires extra structural engineering to support you holding wet soil, which is very expensive. You've got a drainage system that's incorporated into it, with stone, and all that has often, escalated building costs to the point where suddenly that becomes less attractive. So I think we proposed it, we'd love to see it, and, maybe we need to look at all types of alternatives that would truly make it, something that we know we're gonna be able to live with and still meet the needs here.
So Jeff, there does not need to be a protective barrier in the outline that they have of the green space from a code standpoint.
Well, you would need to somehow make sure that if it was accessible, that you had some sort of guardrail or something.
It's not clear from this that it is not accessible.
Yeah, you definitely
Or
need a
could
rail.
not be made easily
Yeah.
accessible.
Yeah, some of those details would help to be clarified,
Yeah, we would certainly have to comply with any sort of, if you had a deck on the second floor, even if you had a roof above you, you'd have a railing system requirement that, in this would trigger that same thing. So.
Sure, on the other hand, we're not going to tell you that you have to put a lockable barrier wall, because if I want to walk out on my roof, even though I've maxed out my expansion, I can certainly do that. It's at my own risk and peril. For purpose of the argument, the roof space is as you have, or will be as you have it drawn to show the expanded area, and nothing more. Do we have any other questions from the board about the structure? Why don't we go ahead and just go through the next part, which I'm sure interests a few people, which is in terms of the scheduling and the timing, and what you see as a projected schedule and how that's going to be managed.
So, again, any downtown situation, schedules and access become sort of a tough question. So we try to address that right off the bat. The idea is, and again, we understand that really all of these businesses that are surrounding the subject property will really be, have potential of being impacted for at least part of the year by any construction that occurs here, just because there's not enough room on the property itself to fully access the property. For instance, picture the example we've been using is an excavator and a dump truck parked here, sort of servicing this lot. Actually, I can show. Parked on the byway, servicing this lot, really shuts the byway right down. So what we've asked to do is to choose a time during the year when a lot of businesses are not in their full season, and to shut down a small segment of the byway, and to ask that two-way traffic be allowed temporarily on Wharf Street and on the byway itself, so that vehicles having to access the wharf and all of the businesses that are down in there can make their way down the byway, or down Wharf Street, and then back out. And then the same can happen on the byway itself, so that there is really no point that that can't be reached by a vehicle other than the subject property. We've also asked that the sidewalks stay open between this space, so that pedestrians walking from the wharf, let's say to the footbridge, would be able to walk past the construction, up the byway, and then out to the footbridge. And really, this space, as we proposed it, is closed for the winter season. The objective is to get all of the major exterior construction done, complete, and sort of buttoned up by the time the season opens again. And so what we've proposed was October 1st, construction beginning, which would be demolition of the existing structure. By the end of October, the demolition is complete and excavation Sort of the cleanup of that hole is underway. Foundation goes in right after it. So by the time the dead of winter strikes us in December, we've got a foundation in place, backfilled, and the streets can be patched back in again. At that point, access becomes a little bit less of a concern. Again, you don't have the heavy equipment that we would normally have, and we can start to resume sort of a more delivery types access schedule. So a truck pulls in, unloads, and pulls out, but they're not having to consume that entire space. And then framing continues on through January, February, and March. Masonry through the month of March. Really, masonry is occurring probably on that back wall earlier, but it's really the masonry veneer that we're most concerned about because it would involve staging setup on the street, really on the subject property's own property line and on the byway property line as well. And then all exterior shell complete by April 1st, and at that point, it becomes just a downtown renovation, just like many others that we've seen. And interior doors, trim, finishes, that sort of thing can all happen after that.
Can you further delineate, let me take a step backward and just make sure I heard what you said. So we've got along the byway, sidewalk stays open continually.
That's correct.
Down Wharf Street, sidewalk stays open continually.
On the south side.
I
Yes.
think, yeah,
Yes.
the entire route remains walkable all the
Sure.
way down Wharf and around Byway.
Traffic two-way down to the pier and back, and also traffic basically to the back side of this building and back. That's open. Is it possible for you to further maybe shrink down the amount of time? For example, you have listed for the entire month, for a 1-month time frame, demolition. It's certainly not going to take 30 days to bring that in and take it down. Is it possible to give a more focused time frame?
And it's certainly something we can look at with Eric in sort of a closer, take a tighter look at schedule. Our concern is always trying not to be rosy in a schedule. But as you say, the month that's been allotted for demolition is probably not a month of heavy demolition. It's probably a day of heavy demolition, or maybe 2 days or 3 days of heavy demolition.
I guess the other thing that I'm looking for is, obviously when you're doing demolition, you can't have vehicles around. But then there'll be cleanup and then there'll be time for vehicles to come through. Is it possible to maybe further delineate when the roads definitely have to be closed off and when they can be remain open?
Yeah, and I think again, that's something we can look at sort of closely if we want, like more of like a week-by-week schedule. We can
And you're
perhaps-
saying times within that week.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Realizing that, like most schedules, they're flexible and they
Yeah.
they don't always lie where you.
But one of the other thoughts too is trying to come up with a schedule. There's two, in talking about it in the office, there's two schools of thought. One being, do you confuse people and say, or do you potentially confuse people and say, it will be open certain day, or let's say we start construction, and that construction continues along, and the days that we're needing the byway, we close the byway, and the days that we don't need the byway is open. That's great in terms of better access. You might have the byway open more days, but it might also be confusing to potential customers who are like, well, I tried to get down to the wharf yesterday, and the trucks were blocking it, so the other school of thought was to actually say the byway is closed in this one section. Where the parking, the pedestrian ways will always remain open, and so there's no concern of having being blocked from movement through the space.
And you could have temporary striping and signage that would be consistent during that period, that people could, whether it's delivery trucks or visitors or whoever could adapt to that for that time period, and then it would be over, rather than the alternative of having it open as much as possible, but not on a routine schedule.
But not unpredictable,
Right.
in a predictable manner.
Sure.
And the other thought was too, to try to maintain that space, try to keep construction limited during certain hours. If we said every day, we'll try to keep construction to an absolute minimum from 6 in the morning to 9:30, so that deliveries can be made on a sort of scheduled basis every day, and it's something that delivery drivers can count on. And then again, the construction then resumes at, let's say, 9:30 or 10, and then continues until the time later in the day. This way, again, everyone can sort of set a schedule and set a routine around that construction that's going on. Just again, for those key pivotal, it's these 3 months are really the most pivotal, because they're the months that heavy equipment is in the site.
October, November, December.
I think the question being asked, though, is can that initial destruction period be shoved back 3 weeks? You
So
only
to
need
just
a
start
week.
later, you're saying, yeah? Is that-
Okay, in
So
other
let's
words,
make
if
this
you
an
took a,
explicit action item to
a
come back to
time
us.
zero, start at time zero, not any magic date, how much time do you actually need to tear down
Yeah,
the building?
And really, one of the concerns that Eric, and I'm speaking for Eric, but the subs on the site is really trying to avoid that December, January period with concrete in the ground.
When did they do the fish pier? It was done in December, late December. We just poured this past year on Atlantic Avenue, the fish pier. There's no problem in December. This was a reasonably cold winter.
And it's just
We actually got the roof up in January, which is important to get your roof up, the rector set. But for pouring the foundation, we have evident example that it is doable, definitely doable in late December.
I'm sure it's testament to the turnout tonight. The big question is, is the timing. I'm sure you have looked at the calendar of events and the other things that happen. The town, while it starts to slow down in the fall, it does still stay in full swing. So this will definitely impact
Businesses.
Some businesses and some. So it's going to be important for us to see how the scheduling is handled and how flexibility, may be managed.
So can I state what I think I heard as the action item for these good folks?
Sure.
Which is to come back to us with a construction chronology that is independent of start date. How long does it take from day one to completing the external structure and reopening the byway?
Well, I'm not really sure it's in the ability of this board to dictate when the project would get started. I'm sure that the select board would likely have input on this as well.
Yeah, I'm not asking for a date, I'm asking
Yeah.
for not a date. I'm
Right.
asking for
It
an
does-
elapsed time schedule, and then we can negotiate about when day one should be.
In other words, an unpadded, realistic.
Yeah, because you'd have to account for, if it started in January, you have winter conditions that would lengthen it. There is this schedule that would be conservative and be longer than a schedule that isn't tied to a date, because you'd have to anticipate all those conditions that could be the worst case. Certainly, we're trying to get it done, or get people off the street by spring, and try to create a balance. But we can look at that and fine tune it, or maybe even come up with different few scenarios, because if you start it too late, then it's gonna take longer.
Sure.
So we could look at those, maybe link it to a scenario, a few dates or a range of dates.
And maybe a sort of maybe one that's centered on, maybe do 3, one centered on again, middle of winter, one centered being fall heavy, and one
Right.
centered being
Yep.
spring heavy.
Yeah, you can think
Yeah.
through what the options might be.
Yeah, we can do that.
I think I heard you say words to the effect that the byway might be open sometimes and then closed other times, depending on the phase of the activity, and that surprised me, because I thought when the byway is not full of excavation equipment, it's likely to be full of materials for construction.
There is a, in terms of, again, areas to stage in terms of staging, meaning delivery of materials,
Right.
Unpacking materials and bringing them inside. There isn't a lot available, but if you look at the width of the byway, there's certainly enough room to get staging in terms of scaffolding adjacent to the structure, and still allow some traffic to pass on the street. It would mean sort of flipping the no parking loading zone that exists now to the opposite side, to the side that the subject property is on.
Yes, you could temporarily change the striping on the byway. There's the parking spaces that run up by the bowling alley. If the lane were shifted over to where those spaces are, the spaces would be temporarily gone, because the staging would be near the building, but at least there would be access through.
I hear those words, but I'm skeptical. I
Having
imagine a
too close.
workspace where people are, say, piling bricks one on top of another, and I imagine a place where a lot of bricks are stacked, and I don't see enough additional space for a car to safely
Right.
pass.
Well,
So could you sketch that out as an action item? Could you please give us a street full of activity and materials picture, showing how you imagine traffic to be able to get past the workmen and their material?
And another adding on to that is, especially considering the time of year, safe access for snow removal. Because we'll have to coordinate. I would imagine we'll like to run the plan through, once we get finalized here, would like to run that through Public Works to see how they will be able, if they'll be able to handle snow removal and any input or suggestions they may have.
Yep, that's good.
See, I was thinking, coming in tonight, I was thinking they were going to be responsible for the byway section that they had shut down, that would be theirs for the duration of the construction, with their responsibility to remove snow so they could use the area for work and material. If it's possible to open up a way that Jody can clear, then maybe we need to think differently about it. So I look forward to your sketch of area that's needed for material and work, and whether or not that leaves access way, which would be a good thing. I'm just skeptical at the moment.
Okay, we can put more thought into that and lay it out for Derek to come up with something that's more detailed.
Thank you.
I think included in that should be location for the dumpster. You're gonna need an outside dumpster, at least 20 yards. And you might think about that also, once the building is complete, where's the trash gonna go? You've completely covered the site. There's no space on this site for a trash can or dumpster services. And you've got a retail space and two tenants.
On the green roof. Yeah, I suspect what we're going to hear shortly are going to be concerns about activities that are going to be taking place and may be impaired by an earlier start date. And also the flexibility of either having access or having it completely shut down. So, but I think you've given us at least a basic understanding of what you're saying in terms of the layout. That pedestrian access at all time is going to be provided, and two-way vehicular access to and from the pier is going to be allowed, and two-way traffic at least to the backside, and at the worst case will be allowed under this initial plan.
May I ask a question about two-way access from the north? Sure. If I were driving in past the bistro and came to the closed section of the byway, would I be able to turn around, or would I have to back out and then make the sharp right-hand turn and continue backing out?
It's a good question, and we have to look at that, we're talking about that as far as, even when you come down towards the wharf, with a configuration there, is there actually enough for passenger vehicles to create like a little cul-de-sac to turn around? Or not, and then what do you do with delivery trucks? Do you have them stop and then back up all the way? So there's certainly a traffic circulation proposal that we would have to put together to really respond to, is it two-way, or is it backing in, or is it, local residents only, or?
Yeah, I would welcome a little more on that.
We need to do that.
Do you know where you're going to be staging materials?
I don't know that we've thought out that.
Okay.
I mean, certainly, when you go into Portland or any other places, it's the limitations of construction in an urban setting, which this really is, puts more challenges on the owner and the contractor to not have as much on site, and so we'd be looking at it that way, and a little more coordination of deliveries and timing, but yeah, I think it can be done.
We want to use the byway. That area, that, as you said, we want to own that area at some point, be critical to us.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
have you had a chance to get a CMP person or other expert in to help you think about the realities of rerouting power and keeping the area electrified and whatnot during this construction?
And actually, that is a concern that we had, is not necessarily as much, CMP is a good point, but we had concerns about water and sewer actually running under this space. We're not exactly sure what'll exist once that foundation comes up. I would assume that a lot of utilities from this block actually run under that structure or around that structure. So there's gonna have to be a lot of care, and it's why there's this sort of chunk here set aside for what on what is a relatively small building, a considerable piece of time, because all of those utilities are going to have to get straightened out, cleaned up, worked around very carefully, and then put back together, as well as our new utilities that'll have to be tied into that. So yes, that is something that has occurred to us, but not something that we have not yet had a CMP site evaluator.
You'll probably do that in the context of thinking through a more rigorous schedule of exactly what needs to be done in the first few months of preparation.
Absolutely. And this is once this project meets approval, there is a lot of forethought that will need to go in a very short period of time to make sure that everything is, as much of this, to answer some of the concerns about on-site storage, a lot of this would be beneficial to prefabricate off-site or pre-stage off-site and really enact quickly. And utilities and all of that design work really falls into that as well. All of that stuff should be thought out pretty well before we actually get in there and start.
As part of our review process, I'll make the recommendation that we schedule a site visit, and we'll see how the board's schedule looks in a little bit. This is obviously going to take a second meeting for us to hear some refinements. Any thoughts on damage or repairs to the road, to the section of the byway, and how that'll be handled?
And we would certainly assume that that actually a good chunk of the byway and Wharf Street immediately adjacent to the building would need to be repaired, and that would be part of the construction documents, making sure that was that verbiage is put in place to make sure that those spaces were restored to existing conditions.
Be aware we may ask for an escrow for something like that, just to make sure that those repairs are effected.
Escrow cover the town road.
Yes. Gentlemen, any other questions about the scheduling? With that in mind, would anyone care to have a comment? Yes.
Ralph Smith McSeagles. I applaud the project here. it'll make that area look great. I do have a few, their boneyard is for their equipment is their view wall. I have a little bit of problem with that as far as where they're gonna place. I mean, that'd be perfect for us, but I wouldn't think about taking your best area of view and putting your air conditioners. So I don't know, that area concerns me a little bit. This wall here with the windows, that's hit by trucks on a regular basis. If you go look at the site review, it's very narrow there. You can't get around with a bus or a truck without being a great driver. As far as getting there during October, it's not gonna, it won't work. If you put any construction there at all in October, you're basically closing the byway from both directions, in my opinion. November 1st, October, as you know, is better than June at my businesses. So we're really concerned about the October closure. Not necessarily November 1st. We'd love to have it after Christmas. But building a building that time of year, we've gone through, as you know, and I understand why they're pushing to get it done, to get it closed up. I think most of us here have the biggest problem with October and a few weeks into November. That's my concerns.
Ralph, can I just ask a question? Can you talk about vehicular limitations versus pedestrian? And how that, 'cause one way to look at this is we've got, I won't count the number of businesses, but that would be directly impacted. And is it just a mindset of that traffic normally comes down through there, or, you know, that can somehow traffic be better affected or directed in other ways, or will vehicular traffic actually cause a limitation of vehicular traffic? Will that actually cause some type of damage or effect for you? How do you see that?
Basically, any impediment. I hate to say this, but any construction on the byway, that time of year basically closes us. As far as I'm concerned, walking through construction takes away parking. Got to come a long way from the parking lot around, down that hill, up and down. You know, it's narrow. It's open now. You can go either way now. It's very narrow and very weird when you hit the top of the corner anyway to make the right. I just think that back and forth with not being able to go all the way through, you know, coming to and from Pier 1 will, you know, be impossible, especially if you start throwing in tractors and trucks and stuff. Like I said, I'm not against it, just a little bit later.
I can imagine.
I'm all for it.
I can imagine lines out down East Ice Cream and over at Pier 1, and so even if traffic was opened to a certain extent, you still have a lot of pedestrians.
It's a
down
very
there,
busy
so.
time of year. As I said, October is stronger than June in both of our businesses.
Good to know.
So it's a concern, big
Okay.
time. And it is narrow. When you go to your site review, I mean, we all live here, you've been there, that area is very narrow. You can't get around with a car. If anybody's standing there, it's a blind curve anyway. There's a hill coming down, a hill going up. It's definitely a bottleneck. And I just don't see, you know, they could probably speak more about how long the deconstruction of this building would take. I can't see that taking a huge amount of time either. So why couldn't they do it? You know, there's got to be a way to do it rather quickly and get on with their construction that they have to do, not having to block it for 6 months, is what I'm thinking. Or we got to push it back at all costs.
And I mean, just out of curiosity, is spring this time of year, is this a less lucrative time period than October? So October is really.
You can have all the way to May as far as I'm concerned.
If you hold it in, if you start October 1st, all the businesses down, the Columbus Day weekend is big, you would kill it you would kill it. And, you know, as you all understand, and I'm Ralph's partner in the bistro and Mine Oyster, we only have a few months to make money.
It's Mark.
Mark, yeah.
Just for Kelly's, just
Sorry,
get your name.
Mark, from the Boathouse Bistro, Ralph's business partner.
Thanks, Mark.
That would kill a huge weekend. Not a little weekend, a huge weekend. And then you still have business through the rest of October, you know, that more so than you do tonight in May. So, yeah, it would seriously impact. And any kind of, you know, having been in the tourist business most of my life, any kind of impediment you put there, any kind, they go somewhere else. They go somewhere else. You make it difficult, they go somewhere else. Even for regulars will go, oh, wow, we can't get there, let's just, you know, that's human nature. So yes, the October would cost us a great deal of money.
Adam, is part of the reason why you have so long for the deconstruction because you don't really know what you're facing as far as sewer and water? Would there be a way to do a bit of exploratory work ahead of time so that you could better appraise that? Because I understand you don't want to say it's going to be done in 3 days, and then you get down there and the sewer and water conundrum is going to take you 3 weeks more than you thought. So would there be a way to do a bit of exploratory work ahead of time so that you could better appraise that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think once we know that the project's moving ahead and we can begin to start sort of amassing forces to really look again closely at all of that. But again, right now we're sort of looking at a space that is, you know, the plans are still very schematic and
I just
the
think
space has been on that.
from what I've heard, that's going to be a real crux point. If you could do, you know, if you could come before the board and say, this is going to get done in a week, so we can push everything back to the 1st of November, well, I think a lot of the opposition would start to melt away. But you can't really say that until you've better appraised what you're facing. If not trying to put words in your mouth. But.
No, but that makes sense.
Well, I think I heard a dilemma exposed. You said, once the project is approved, you can roll up your sleeves and do a lot of the research that would answer these questions. But I think it's likely approval will be conditional on knowing many things about what we're getting into. And so there's a chicken and egg problem here. And the question is going to be, how much work can you do to give the town information with which to confidently approve the project?
Yes.
Have you thought about what you're going to do with all the snow that's going to accumulate on this flat roof?
And what, I'm sorry, what's your name for our,
Joanna Overcamp from
Great.
Christmas Magic.
thank you.
And
We get a lot of snow in the wintertime.
modern codes and again, structures built to modern codes are designed to handle those snow loads. So really, short of the spaces that are needed to be cleared for access, for instance, there would never be a reason to shovel this roof short of some kind of mechanical failure or having to fix a section of roof or something like that. But again, snow removal on a new structure shouldn't be the concern that it is on an older structure where things are maybe not built necessarily to support those full loads. That is our plan. There's not a lot of space, as you know, to remove snow from this area, and we'd have to work on a way to a maintenance regime to try to get that snow off the roof and then removed from the property. No different than the sidewalk out front, or the snow at the back entrance. I mean, really, this whole downtown area it has a bit of a snow removal concern. Challenge.
My second question would be, you don't have any intention of restricting access to the parking that's behind the building, the parking?
They don't own that That's owned by the abutting property owner. Yeah, so there wouldn't be any change in that parking lot, or how vehicles get in and out, or maybe you own that, I don't know, I'm not sure who owns that parking lot, but
Yeah,
you're the one
there's
with the one on the
a
north
store.
side. Yeah,
Alex Logan, I'm the landlord for
Yeah.
Christmas Magic and the Custom House. So we own part of that parking lot along with the royal family that has the hutch.
okay.
Yes?
I'm Pat Carmoli. I own the Fudge Factory and the Taffy Factory on the byway directly across the street from this building.
Hi,
And I
Pat.
agree with what Mark and Ralph have said in terms of the starting date. Especially for us, I anticipate demolition being noisy and dusty and dirty. And our Fudge Factory services on the sidewalk, so we have an open window to service the customers. So anything that happens before Columbus Day is going to really directly impact us.
Is that your typical close Columbus Day?
Columbus Day is our typical close day.
Okay, good to know, thank you. Thanks, Pat.
Well, even though it's not been discussed, there would definitely have to be some sort of screening when demolition process is going on. So it wouldn't affect noise, but, you know, I mean, it would affect flying debris and stuff.
And controlling traffic in and out of that, traffic being pedestrian traffic, and
Sure.
just in terms of liability, keeping people out of that space in off construction hours is definitely.
But as Mark said, if there's construction going on there, even though it might be screened, people aren't gonna walk up there to our place.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, you were going to say,
Alex
Alex?
Logan, I'd kind of echo Ralph's comments that, you know, I mean, it's a great improvement in the downtown here. But, you know, if it all goes as it's, you know, presented. But the timeline is just, it's unacceptable. You can't be starting it in October. You can't be, you're gonna lose too many tenants, you're gonna lose too many businesses. That's not fair.
And
You've
Alex,
got to condense it down.
from your perspective, what's, bless you, what's
You know,
a
out in
more
the- you know,
acceptable
out in the
starting?
spring is further. I mean, you've got, you know, November is hard, but there's still business around. You know, that's the pajama weekend is very important to a lot of people. And then depending on the type of business, you know, it still matters. And so keeping that construction look, that feel, you know, you gotta minimize that. And, you know, taking down that building isn't gonna take a lot of time. You know, unless you're using a hammer. So, you know, and going later in the spring, if you need to, even if you had to, you know, it gets expensive to stage certain parts of that construction, but, you know, you probably want to do it all at once and close it in all at once. But that, you know, the later in the spring is easier than in the fall.
Okay.
I mean, I've got, as in a butter, I've got some issues, but I can deal with those in a private way.
I think just for my own clarity, it'd help if I had my calendar out with some critical dates.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good thought, is to get those really important weekends or midweek events,
Right.
local events that really drive people to the harbor.
Water being turned on and off, so
Yep.
that takes
Yep.
care of a certain portion of businesses, but that will help at least frame the timeframe a bit for me. Mark, you've got something else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think generally most of the business owners are in favor of the plan. It's just, it's great as long as it's not costing us money. And as it stands now, it's costing us a lot of money. So yeah, I think we're all on board that the timeframe needs to be smaller, and October is out of the question, just out of the question.
Yes.
My name's Cliff Kane, I own the cannery. Guess who's going to get hit the worst with this? If I may come round, I have a few comments. The cannery store is this side here, and I'm open usually, well, historically for the last 25 years till the end of December. It is going to impact me just the same as any other business. October would cost me a lot of money. when I get beer trucks, any kind of trucks here with their engines idling, the noise makes my shop shake. The fumes come in the door. If it's a nice sunny day, I kind of like to keep my door open. If I've got bulldozers with things knocking down, pipes with diesel fumes going off from October the 1st, I may as well just close the shop. It wouldn't be workable. I couldn't ask my staff to work in those conditions. We wouldn't be able to hear anybody. It just is totally impractical. You asked for a date. My date would be Monday, October the 27th. It's the
You
earliest.
close that day?
No, we closed December. I'm going to have to take a bite on this.
Okay.
I've been in your store and literally year-round,
That's right.
so you're one of the few
I
that...
am open February for sales.
Yes.
March for sales, weekends, sunny day, I'm down there. That pays my mortgage through January, February, March. You know, people coming in. I've had these sales in February for years and years and years, and people know about them. So, you know, it's a nice building, I agree. Something's going to happen. I can't stop it, and I don't really want to. I just have to find a way to live with it. I have some questions about the access, if I could talk about that first. My thought, when I go to a city, people build like a 6-8 foot wooden fence, keep it all nice and clean and tidy, and the work goes on in there, and all the bricks, as you say, and the bits of wood and the cement bags and are all kind of tidily tucked away. If we're just going to have the byway shut off and a few wooden barricades, of which some people will climb over after hours coming back from McSeagle's, kick things around and throw them around. I would like to see it professionally kept being closed. And maybe that means a fence with a gate on it for access, down here to the byway, footpath, and then up to where they end. You know, at the end of the building then, and enclose it and make it secure, because don't forget you've got kids walking around there, young kids on their own. They'll play with anything that's lying around. And I had once a construction where they were building a sidewalk, and they had an iron bar sticking up about a foot, and then they put a cone on this to stop people tripping over it. And there were 3 guys came out with books and he goes, "Hey, look at that!" And he goes, whack! And he nearly broke his foot. And they do all these stupid things. And I didn't feel very sorry for him. Now, the driving, you come down here and you drive. And one thing I must say about the planning that I've seen so far, nobody's come and talked to me as a neighbour. And yet now they're presenting this and asking me to be neighbour and let it go through. I would have appreciated somebody coming down with my 30 years of being in my spot, knowing exactly what the traffic flow is and what happens around there, to come and talk to me and get some ideas. The same with the other neighbours, McSeagle's and the properties along this side. We all know what happens, you know, how traffic flow is, where people walk down the middle of the street, all that kind of stuff. And I don't see any way just driving down there with trucks and then they have to back out. Are they going to back up towards the Round Payne's building? Maybe we could think about this a bit more cleverly and have right up close near the curb a little turnaround for medium-sized trucks anyway, or at least vehicles. Because Ralph at McSeagle's, he gets people dropping customers off. You know, they take your mum and dad out. You've got to try and get near close to the restaurant, drop them off, and you go and, you know, the kids go and park the car. That happens all the time. So you need something where you can kind of come round, back in here and up. And don't forget that you'll be asking the traffic to go on the Blake's property. I mean, everybody has to help out here. So you have to talk to some of the neighbours and say, would you mind like not using those parking spaces where the dumpsters are for 6 months so that the vehicles can get down, turn around and out? And the same as the Logans who own this parking space there. Maybe they should be approached and said, look, would be nice if we could work something out with you guys so that you don't use your parking and be friendly and park somewhere else, so we can get all our supplies there, so we can open up the byway quicker. You know, it's got to be worked together. And have you been approached? No, nothing, you see. And I don't see how somebody's going to drive down that end of the byway and back out again. Hard enough getting around that corner. These steps I'm a little bit concerned about. I've seen no end of people falling down there, stepping into the road as a kid with his whizzy car with a boom boom going, nearly knocking them over. I would think there shouldn't be steps there. It should be a little seat for a couple of guys while their wives shop in the store, and then you have one entrance up the street. Those get cleaned by vehicles as they go around the corner. Buses have to go and up. They can't make it in one go. And there's no mention that I've seen in here of any waterfall, you know, roof water. At the moment there's a gutter here that's making the building rock. It just all falls in the street and it ices over. Is it being connected underground to the main runoff system? I don't know. There's, in the road here, there's 6-inch water mains, taps. Are they going to get disturbed, or are they going to put plating over it while these big heavy equipment? I don't know that either, not answered in here. And then, so that's a lot of my serious concerns, is the access and the noise and the start. I have problems because I don't really understand it when you're saying, well, it could be 3 feet, could be 4 feet, could be 6 feet. To me, you're creating living space out of a roof and a putting green over there and a barbecue pit here. That's not really a roof, it's another whole living feature. So we've got to take the roof seriously, and the board will have to give you permission to do something specific. And I do agree that this is could have been worked out easily. I could just estimate how much this is, say, well, half of that is about here, isn't it? You could have drawn that a bit easier for us to understand. And the height, I get my sunshine, comes down here onto my cannery, and I guess I'm not understanding all these measurements of where you're from and the highest point of the land and where the existing one is and how much higher you're going. I'm not totally convinced that I fully understand that. I'm quite intelligent. I'm trying hard. So actually, how high is that from there to there? And how much higher is it than the existing building? That's something I'd like to know. And when I did the cannery expansion, which I started the day after Christmas, and I knocked the whole thing down, rebuilt it, and I had everything in my shop by May 15th. Merchandise, carpets, everything. So if you push, you can, I know you've got more foundations than I had, but it's workable. But where is the height calculation from? I had to go from the average of the grade of the ground, not the highest point. So my high point was the pavement. My low point, because I'm over water, was the ground where the ocean comes in and out. So then they drew a line and they said halfway along there, that's where we can compute you without the height of the building. And if I could have taken the calculation that you're using, which is the highest point at the back, I could have probably gone up another 2 feet.
And it is actually based on the highest average. It's this calculation here. We're taking a series of points around the building, determining an average, and that's really what sets
Okay, then I understand that.
Adam,
So I am concerned about the height here.
Adam, would it be possible to show an elevation and maybe with a line? This is the existing, this is a dimension of what the proposed roof will be. This is a line showing where the different existing roofs are, at least for comparison.
I think so, yeah.
And it looks to me like that parapet wall is on the brick section is higher than the wall of the green roof section?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct. Yeah, and this is, because this is truly the facade.
yes.
This is that open facade space.
Could you make the front bit where, because the angle of the sun, if that was recessed a bit more, would it look horrible, or, you know, if you made more of a, wherever that wall comes from, make that like the parapets, and then this kind of in keeping but a bit lower? That's just to cover your machinery. I don't know what kind of machinery you're proposing. And there's a lot of ifs that we don't really know yet, in my opinion.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Hi. That last bit, sort of, Arthur Webster from Orange Candy, that last bit sort of goes with my concerns. I was standing in my store looking out the cash register window at my little bit of the harbor, in a harbor that I can see, and just wondering how, you know, can you just show me on the existing place that the middle view there, what?
This one?
No. I'm looking down, yeah, that one. Is it going to be roughly the, it's going to be in line with this. See, I'm looking down.
Oh, I see, like you're asking basically.
I'm looking at this, I'm looking at this right there.
Then you've some, I'd actually have to, we could actually do like a street study that maybe shows how this building will relate to the street. And I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you exact, just because the perspectives are kind of funny.
Right.
I can tell you that what we've used as our, you know, this facade here
Right.
is basically this line here. So if that helps at all when you're on the site.
Which building is it, you said?
It's this line here across this facade.
Yeah?
Is at the, basically, and again, I have to investigate to get it right down to
So
the, it's this, but it's back behind, so that's not, that's actually like,
It's pushed back.
25
it will come
feet back.
forward. Right, it will come
Exactly.
forward 25 feet.
so it'll actually, it won't look like it does here. In other words, it might be closer to that
That's what I thought.
line
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
But again, we can do like an actual investigation of that. Would illustrate that.
During this lull in questions, could I elaborate on the comment that you heard about fencing off the worksite? When you do the sketch of the worksite configuration, would you include your plans for perimeter definition?
Okay.
Thanks.
Question, Jeff, who has actual approval authority on shutting down a town road?
Selectmen and Public Works Director.
So this will go to the selectmen for the physical
Yeah.
shutdown,
This is
and for
really
what
a
period of
initial
time?
Q&A, meet and greet sort of
Yeah.
session, so that we get all the questions the town has on paper, and I'll bring in the appropriate people and see if we can get answers for next meeting.
Okay, and that will then be an open, that will be shared with the town, with the public?
It'll be, your next meeting, we'll have those answers.
Now, are we at, Mike, are we at disposal pretty much on what, 24, 48-hour notice to do a site inspection? We're calling for a site inspection?
Well, let's plan on doing, do you want to, why don't we look at in 2 weeks, sometime the week of the 26th, 7th, and 8th, the last week in May, for the board to do an on-site. Do you think that would give you guys the opportunity, Adam and Danielle, to have a few more of the questions that we've at least started to propose to you, to have answers, or would you rather wait until that first week in June? Our next planning board meeting for this application would be on June 11th.
June 11th.
That's the week of the 9th.
I mean, we certainly could be prepared to have reference materials that compare the existing building with the proposed, you know, so if we looked at the existing building facade and it's, you know, relative to the proposed, we would know it's 2 feet higher or 2 feet lower, so we could have some materials for that. You know, not everything in here, but we have the things that would probably be necessary to make a comparison.
Sure. And I don't think we're asking to have drawings and things done.
But I think it would
It's-
be important to say, okay, there's the proposed.
Sure.
How does it relate? And so maybe Adam can do some fancy Photoshop and merge the two and do something that would help us visualize.
Because I'd like to give you enough time, say if we did this in 2 weeks, then if we had comments based on a manhole of water shut-off valve that, thank you for pointing out, or other things that we could ask questions about, and then that would give you time to
I do think it would
respond.
be easier on site, and we certainly could have more information just to help create that
Is
comparison.
it reasonable to say in 2 weeks?
Yep, like later?
I am perfectly willing to have multiple site visits.
Sure.
One of those site visits I would like to have after they provide a sketch of the work zone, materials staging plans, perimeter definition, so that we can look at the byway and see that part of the project in our minds too. And that might be a subsequent second site visit, I don't know.
Is that a matter for us, or is that a matter for the selectmen? Anything that
I
relates
think
to
it's certainly
shutting
something
down.
that you guys should
Yeah.
discuss.
So the question is, what input would be, perhaps you could advise the board separately, what input should we at least encourage or deal directly with Knickerbocker?
I'm going to
to
do my
get
best to
material?
provide you guys with the Board of Selectmen's input and Public Works Director's input, and you should use that to analyze this project.
Yeah,
why don't
there's
we-
certainly a process, leaving this meeting, where we may need to put together that plan in more detail, then go meet with the selectmen, Public Works, and have that next planning board meeting. And if that can't be done before the site walk, then maybe it does trigger another site walk.
So why don't we tentatively plan on an initial site plan review in 2 weeks, and then at that point in time, we can determine if we wanted to do a second one, and we may do that right before, prior to, like at 5 o'clock, prior to the next planning board meeting.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we'll try to be responsive
5
to your
o'clock on the
timeframe so as
11th
not
of
to
June.
delay you. There may be other factors, so we're
Oh.
available.
Possible.
And you may not want to push that out, because this could end up getting pushed out 2-3 months before you
Yeah.
get a,
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
you know, a legal decision, if you will.
Yeah, okay, good.
So, can the board choose a date to do the site plan, or the site visit? So, are we able to look at our calendars and say 27th, 8th, or 29th?
Better look at Tom's.
I'll be here.
We'll be here. Mike, you fix it. Just tell us
I mean, I
what you
can't give you that right now because I'd have to look at our bookings, obviously.
Sure.
You know, because,
Why don't we start with Wednesday, the 28th,
okay.
at 5 o'clock?
Do you want to try for Thursday only, because it'll allow the paper to come?
Yeah, and you're getting into
advertise
Memorial
this
Day
on site
weekend.
week, so as many people know about it as possible.
Thursday the 28th. Sorry.
What date?
Thursday,
The
the 29th.
29th, I think that would just allow people to see the advertisement for the
Sure.
on-site meeting one more time in the paper.
And then we're in a Memorial Day weekend, so Thursday would probably be the right day, is that?
Actual Memorial's the week
After.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Oh.
We say Thursday, the 29th at 5 o'clock?
Yep, and meet on site.
Okay.
Okay.
And then with the potential to, if another one's needed, we may do it on the 11th, prior to the next subsequent planning board meeting.
Right, okay.
Do we have any other questions, any other input that any of the butters or anyone from the audience can give us? Eric, is there a, can I make you stand up? No.
It's okay. I think we'd be totally willing to work with everybody in the area, of course, so.
Sure.
Do our best to make that happen.
Okay.
I have one last comment and request for this phase of our ongoing conversation about this. The good citizens of Boothbay Harbor have every right to expect their town to do whatever it can to help mitigate the negative effects of doing this good project. As you think through that construction schedule, if you know of things the town could do to help compress that timeline, would you please jot that down and bring us a list of ideas that you've had of ways in which the town can help expedite that? And I'm imagining there might be things that aren't, you know, resource intensive, but if we know about them in advance, we can be more ready and equipped to act in concert with the construction crew.
Okay, good.
Anyone else? Yes?
Betty Maddox, owner Jansen's Dwelling. I just, a comment, it'd be really nice, I don't know if it has to happen, but it would be nice to let not just the abutters know who own the buildings when these things happen, but the tenants that rent from the abutters. I mean, most of these people didn't even know that, unless they've read the register, they don't get the paper, only the people that own the buildings do. So it'd be nice for the tenants in the future to know that these things are happening.
And how does that, so you guys go by the tax records or what addresses are in the tax? You know, I could take today for anyone who's here, or, you know, if the tenant would have a different address, because you'd be the owner, so you're not living at the building, so you'd get it at home. Yeah, that's a good point. So, or we use street addresses, but if anyone wants to give me an address that wants to be noticed, at least from our perspective, I don't know if you'd be willing to expand the town's noticing.
It's easy to know who the owner abutters are and to get word out to them. How would the town go about knowing who the tenants are?
Property owners can provide us with the addresses. I'm more than happy to send out notifications to anyone.
Yeah. So it sounds like the process is to notify the people we know are the abutters, and then those people in turn can notify.
Well, when I went around to
tenants.
tell the people about the meeting, just so that we would come together as a group, because I think all of us think it's a great building, and it's gonna really enhance the town. Anybody that was a renter, a lot of people didn't even know this was happening.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we know
I
who they
don't know how it
are.
happened, but I do think it's important.
The owner has to notify.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this? Great. Hearing none, why don't we go ahead and we'll continue this application for the time being. Our next meeting will be for the site review on the 29th at 5 o'clock. We'll say on-site, weather depending. We'll start there, and then we'll hear the application again on the 11th. Okay? Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Give us a couple minutes just to clear the decks here. We'll get ready for the next applicant. Thanks, everyone, for coming in. Great. Okay, thanks for everyone's patience. Let's go on and move to the next applicant, which is Jeff Curtis for 10 Commercial Street. Jeff, thanks for your patience.
I'm Jeff Curtis.
Great. Why don't you give us an idea of what you've got, where you've been, and where you're going?
I'm the owner of 10 Commercial Street, which I think will forever be known as the old Carboni's building, just to get you situated. We're here because I'm having a change of tenants. And Jeff has characterized this as a change of use, and we have a little friendly disagreement about whether it really is a change of use. In my view, the general store, which was the old tenant, was involved in general retail under the zoning code, and the new tenants are an art gallery, Maria's Art Gallery, and an arts and crafts store, also general retail, in my view, under the zoning code. The disagreement is that Jeff characterizes the Harbor General Store as a neighborhood grocery store under the ordinance, which if it were, would be a change of use because it's not going to continue to be a neighborhood general store. My problem with that is that our zoning ordinance has a very detailed and specific definition of what a neighborhood general store, a neighborhood grocery store is, and the Harbor General Store doesn't fit that definition. The zoning code says a neighborhood grocery store is a small store, 1,600 square feet or less. The Harbor General Store was 3,600 square feet, so more than double the size. And the ordinance also says that a neighborhood grocery store is a store that sells predominantly to people in the vicinity, people in the neighborhood. And I don't have the data, but I can almost guarantee you the Harbor General Store sold primarily to people from Massachusetts, not from here. So our zoning ordinance does not have a definition of a large grocery store. It doesn't have that as a use. So when you get above 1,600 square feet, even if you're selling groceries, the only use that fits is general retail. So the Harbor General Store, in my view, was engaged in general retail. Hannaford is engaged in general retail. If I'm correct, there's no change of use because it's general retail before, under the old tenant, it's going to be general retail going forward. So I think that's sort of an initial question. Are we even supposed to be here taking up your time?
Well, I think it's two questions. Number one, when was the ordinance put into effect, and at what date did the current or prior owner establish the general store?
Boy, that store has been there my entire life in some respects.
Well,
I mean,
under
it's
different
over
tenants.
again, Carboni says, I was a child in Carboni, so it's been something similar.
So probably
to
that predates.
What was it
That
before? That was
predates-
the A and P?
God,
The original A and P?
I wasn't there to see it.
Oh, was
Does
it
that
Sherman's?
predate?
Sherman's was
Yeah,
the original
ordinance?
AMP, yeah.
If it does, then it's a general store.
Well, I think
Meets
what
the
Jeff is
requirement.
asking, and it's a very valid question, is whether the board considers what was there to be different than what he's proposing. If they consider it to be different in a different use, or they don't agree that I considered the old use to be a neighborhood store or close to it, he has no reason to go through a change of use or site plan review. He can go.
Well,
by
is there an
what-
elephant in the room? Is there some issue that turns on the question of whether this is a change of use that we would want to look at carefully? If this is a
that's
change
great
of
question for you
use,
guys to decide.
what decision would we need to make that is of concern here?
Well, so there's two things. One, clearly, the new proposed use is allowed in the business district, it's just general retail.
Yeah, I
So-
doubt that any of us have any
Right.
qualms
So
about
there's
the
no
new
issue
use.
there. The two issues for me that I think it's important to address that point are, first of all, the definition of neighborhood grocery store. If you expand that tonight to include a 3,600 square foot store, then in my neighborhood, my residential neighborhood, not the one downtown, but where I live, all of a sudden, I'm concerned somebody's going to come to you and say, hey, I just heard a neighborhood grocery store can be 3,600 square feet, and I want to put one right beside 24 Park Street where Jeff lives. I don't think that's what we meant.
No,
I
nothing
think-
that we decide establishes a precedent.
Okay,
So,
but I think the reason why our zoning ordinance has a specific definition for a neighborhood grocery store is because there are situations where you're allowed to say, yes, you can go into a residential neighborhood. It's maybe a conditional use, but you're small, you're serving people in the neighborhood. If they want it, we think that's okay. So there was a reason when we passed the zoning ordinance to specify what is a small neighborhood grocery store. We didn't bother to specify what was a large grocery store because it's just general retail and it's allowed in all the business districts. So there's no, to your point, there's no elephant in the room. There's no reason to regulate a large general store or to review when there's a change from a large grocery store to a large other retail.
well, let me not speak metaphorically about elephants. Normally, when a change of use application comes to us, it triggers a number of questions about parking, waste disposal, signage, a lot of things that have to be reviewed that have nothing to do really with the use of the building,
Right.
but are boxes that must be checked to make sure that whatever is going on there comes up to the standards that the town has set for a business.
Right.
A change of use simply triggers a close look at all of those attributes of the operation to make sure they're in compliance with ordinance.
Right.
Are there any of
Just-
those that would
To
be
backtrack,
triggered?
If you refer to page 170:23, it's determining the similarity of uses, and that's where the crux of this whole discussion lies.
Okay.
It's that I considered this to be a neighborhood store. And that question lies with you, not with me, but the reason why this is in front of you is because I consider this a neighborhood store, and I referred to section 170-27, letter C, number 2. In determining similarity of uses, the code enforcement officer or planning board shall consider the following factors: size and appearance, impact on abutting property, scale of operations, traffic, environmental impacts, the purposes of the district, and compliance with the provisions of all town codes and ordinances. I consider this to, no, it is not a 1,500 square foot neighborhood store, but in my opinion, it was a 3,600 square foot neighborhood store. I consider the essence of the businesses to be the same, regardless of the additional square footage. But that is my opinion, and that's the only reason why we're having this discussion now.
And there aren't
That's what
any
you
shortfalls
agree.
or non-compliances that we would like to tidy up, that we would like to take advantage of this opportunity to tidy up. I don't think there are any parking
If it was
issues.
simply transferring ownership or one tenant
Yeah.
to another and the operations were the same, in my opinion, I wouldn't have him here.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what's being proposed, to be quite honest. I'm not exactly sure of the setup or the nature of the business or the traffic or the flow or the number of customers. I don't know any of those things. I don't. I know that the store has now been gutted from what it was, and that's great. That's awesome.
Mr. Curtis,
Thanks.
for
Thanks,
purposes
Jeff.
of this discussion, setting aside square footage, are you asserting that the businesses are not dissimilar? That they're similar businesses? What exists today and
They are
what you
both
propose?
retail. I'm asserting they're both retail selling different products. Within the definition, the only definition of use in our zoning ordinance, in my view, which fits the past one and the present ones, or the coming ones, is general retail.
No, I said set aside the square footage, which is your question with
No, I did.
regard to whether it's a
Yeah.
neighborhood store. Set that aside. Are you asserting that you don't see these as dissimilar businesses?
Dissimilar?
Yeah.
They're very dissimilar. I see
Okay.
them as very dissimilar.
That's fine,
Yeah.
that's fine, okay.
Yeah.
You've answered the question. They are dissimilar.
If I may address your point, sir, on parking, on the effects that you might want to regulate here. I don't think there are any. Parking, I have 5 parking places out front. It's grandfathered. I'm in the downtown business district where no parking is required. So that's not changing. I have what I had before. The signage, because it's all really the same presentation to the customers, is the same. The words will be different, but the size of the signs and the location, everything is the same. What other concerns might there be?
Oh, there's a whole list. How much nuclear waste are you planning to issue?
Very, very little, yeah, very little. Actually, I'm glad not to have a food business involved in the building. That's hard on a building, especially as you mentioned earlier, when you have these buildings built on their footprints and no real waste disposal areas.
Unfortunately,
Traffic-wise,
I think in order for us to determine whether the uses are different, we need to hear you explain to us what your plan is for the use. So
Okay,
to
yep.
that end, if you could help tell us what you're planning to do.
right, so it's 3,600 square feet in the past, before the past 2 tenants, it was divided into a 1,200 square foot space and a 2,400 square foot space. You may remember there was Atlantic Cotton, was a t-shirt shop in the smaller space several years ago. Before that, it was Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And then in the larger space, the 2,400 square foot space, it has been a series of tenants all operating somewhat similar convenience stores since 1992 when I bought the building. The new use, we've divided back now. So in the 1,200 square foot space, Maria Board is moving her studio gallery from the old P&P Pastry location on McCown Street down to that space. And in the 2,400 square foot space, a business which we actually own together called Tide Pools of Maine is opening, which is going to be a gift shop, if you will, but it's going to be, we hope, a little more upscale, arts and crafts. It's going to have a little bit of a unique approach where we're going to offer vendors, artists, craftspeople, the opportunity to have their own little business rather than just sell to us and us sell. We are renting spaces by the week either 6 by 6 or 9 by 9 or multiples of that, to people who aren't quite ready to make the leap to rent their own storefront, either because they don't have enough merchandise or because it's a new concept and not everybody is as brave as some of us retailers. We're pretty excited about that, and actually so aren't the people. We have it about half full now with vendors, and then we have our own merchandise and some consignment merchandise. So, you know, in terms of a description, I hope it's an upscale gift shop.
How many vendors would you?
If we rented all the spaces at the 9 by 9 size, we figured 16. But some might take a 6 by 6, and so there might be 2 6 by 6s, and another person might take 2 9 by 9. So we're saying 16 to 20 is what we're thinking, but we're not there yet.
We're not thinking of the lack of parking space downtown. What would be your feeling if the board posed certain restrictions on the hours in which your subtenants would come? In other words, they don't take up the doggone spaces from 7:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, and then nobody can get down and shop.
That's actually the first rule of retail, is we do not allow ourselves or our employees to park either in our spaces or the side of the street. We rent spaces behind Sewell's. Is it still called Sewell's? Actually, Auto Parts, right out back here.
But am I right in assuming that this is actually the theory of the operation, is that those 16 people aren't going to be there from 7:30 to 5?
Exactly.
Because if they were, well, you know, then
It's
you
a
know, they
central
might as well
cashier.
have their own shop instead of have you.
Well,
as
that's
a
right.
vendor.
That is one of what we think is a real interesting perk to people. We are running the sales as a central cashier, just like a store. To a customer, it's going to look like a store.
Yeah.
Hopefully not too
So
disorganized.
they may come and drop something off.
Yeah, well, then they have the option. Like, for instance, we have an artist that's taking a space that hopes to have his easel set up there and paint, but he's not going to be painting from 9 to 9.
Sure.
He's going to be there when he wants to, and he has the option to be there or not. So we're hoping to get some of that artist in residence feel, but a lot of people are not
But the
interested in that. You're
impact
right.
would be very low.
Very low. And
Well,
one of our
unless-
tenants immediately said, oh, thank goodness for the parking across from the bank, which is $3 a day. He parked up there, he was glad for the walk down.
Do you imagine some of the renters moving their inventory in and out on a daily basis?
No.
Or does
No,
it
it's
stay with
weekly.
you and you're responsible for locking up and?
Yeah, for the week.
Oh, yeah.
It's
We
there'll
hope
be a
they'll be
turnover
moving.
time.
We hope they'll be moving new inventory in very regularly, but because that means it's selling. But that will be early in the morning, they'll have their own keys, I mean.
And I think going back to the original question about, you know, is it a change of use? If part was back, whether you say, I forget if you said it was 1 or 2 renters in the past, that it was a t-shirt shop, or at least part of it was a t-shirt shop, well then, you know, that seems to be totally general retail, you know, the same that you're talking about. So I think that kind of a precedent has been set that if we, you know, can argue about a, you know, a neighborhood store, but if we look at the other side, and at least part of the area in the past was a t-shirt shop, well, then to me, it seems, you know, it leans the argument much more the other way, that, you know, the precedent has been set for general retail rather than,
Well, it depends on when the
neighborhood
regulation
store.
was set, though. The date, from that point forward, I could understand the argument, but anything prior to that, it wouldn't apply.
You need to be looking at the last use, not the
Yeah,
use
yeah.
that 10 tenants ago or 2 tenants ago. It's the change that's happening now, and it's, again, I'm not at all trying to argue against Jeff, I'm really not. I'm just trying to further explain the rationale for Jeff being here, taking his time to explain this to you.
As a
Is that
purely,
when it was the market, for instance,
yeah.
was there an art gallery?
Yeah, he had my paintings,
Yeah.
he had my paintings,
Okay, he had
yes.
paintings as part of that, and again, I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No, I'm just answering you,
So
yeah.
was it a gallery? Was it because, we have things such as, very specific idea of a gallery. The definition of a neighborhood store, a grocery store, is a small retail space of less than 1,600 square feet. So that's absolutely understood that this is a different scenario in terms of square footage. Selling food and convenience items and serving the residents in the immediate vicinity. My opinion was that was the village market's function. So all you need to figure out is what his description of what he's proposing, is that the same thing? If it is,
If we
we're all set,
accept,
we're
if
done.
we accept your assessment, so are there any specific issues or
None.
concerns that you have?
It is, I
It's
do
at
not have
times.
concerns, this is really, it's up to the board to decide if they have thoughts or concerns that set this apart from what it was being used as when it was the village market.
So two very
In your
separate.
application, oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
It says you're selling prepared food and convenience items. Can you elaborate on that?
What the previous tenant, did they?
No, what you're doing. Will you be selling any?
Oh, well, actually, at this point, we have nobody's taken us up on that. But the concept that we had was, we have this great farmer's market in town that shows up once a week, and then oftentimes gets rained out. We were hoping to attract some of those farmers to set up an indoor, non-weather sensitive stand, produce stand, basically, and have a little indoors farmer's market. And then the sweet tooth in me was hoping that we'd get somebody to cook cookies, bake cookies, and have some cookies at the counter. At this point, we don't have any, but that's still an option. So that's what I meant by that. Not sandwiches, not lunches, not prepared food that way.
Jeff, if someone came along and wanted to sell sandwiches or make cookies, would that be permitted under the general retail?
It all depends, they would need a victualer's license through the Board of Selectmen, and I think that would inherently be tied in with some sort of approved use. And I'm not sure that retail and food sales would tie in with use. Probably packaged goods, such as prepackaged food, I would see that as a retail item. I'm not sure if you wanted to sell sandwiches. I would think that is more as a restaurant under our definition.
But somebody did cookies, they were wrapped, that's packaged, right?
There's a good one that's open for interpretation. I
don't
have a good answer.
We would have to get a license from the Department of Agriculture, and which we have, in anticipation that somebody might take us up. But the only thing we don't have is the victualer's license, because we feel like the selectmen would hear us pretty quickly on that, and so we just haven't had the opportunity to go there because nobody's asked us.
But it's a
Or said they wanted
possibility.
to.
You wouldn't, if someone approached you to do that, you wouldn't say, no, we're not.
No, it's more than a possibility, it's a hope. We are actively trying to get somebody to take that on.
I don't see an issue here.
I don't know.
I think, the ordinance doesn't define a grocery store. It
It
just
does
says,
define a grocery store, but it
Well, it
doesn't
says-
define the retail, and that's the difficulty.
yeah, but
That everything's sort of.
it's kind of loose and based on what they were selling there.
Mhm.
I mean, they sold anything they thought they could sell.
Absolutely, like I
You know.
said, if you guys are comfortable with that.
But are there any objections? Let's just assume it's a change you use. Does
I
anyone
don't
on
see
the
that there's
board
an
have
issue
any
here. I think-
objections? Either way.
So those are the two separate questions.
Yeah.
Do we see any issues here? If we call it a change of use, are there issues that need to be addressed? The second question is, what guidance should we give to Jeff about bringing things like this to our attention and dragging an applicant before the planning board? On that second question, I have an opinion I'd like to share. I'm glad you did, and I would like you to continue bringing to this board any change of activity that has the potential of changing the implications for the downtown, or any part of the harbor, the surrounding abutters, or the activities of the harbor. If in your view, there's a sufficient change in activity that might cause implications, then it should come to the planning board. In this case, we're going from 1 or 2 tenants to possibly 16 tenants, and that inherently raises the possibility of some difference in activity, which precipitated the question about people coming and going and parking and filling up spaces, for example.
And-
So I think you used good judgment in bringing that to the planning board because of that aspect of this change in activity.
Can we second that and request the chair to consider?
Because I personally don't see that there are any issues with the findings of fact. To me, I personally feel like I can't go in and order a pizza or a sandwich, so that feels like a change. However, I may be able to go purchase a bag of freshly roasted coffee beans, or maybe some cupcakes, or something like that.
Not today, you can't.
No.
That's theoretical.
So shall we,
That's enough.
shall we take and Jeff is here, he's paid the fee, we've gone through the application. Shall we take a vote first to see whether or not we feel that this is a change of use?
Let's make a motion in that direction.
Okay, but then I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that this not be considered a change in use.
Okay, and I'll second that. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, a vote that this is not a change of use. All in favor of saying that this is not a change of use, signify. We have two. Okay, and those that think it is a change of use, very good. We're going to consider this a change of use.
That answers the question about getting my fee back.
Sorry. Do we give fees back?
Nope.
That money's gone.
There goes my cupcake. That in mind.
So, and for the record, the board is considering this a change of use from a neighborhood grocery store to a general retail?
Yes. Okay. That in mind, we have in front of us our findings of fact, which reference sections 170, Article 5, subsection 170-61, which is our site plan review standards. And that does everything from utilization and traffic and parking and storage and pedestrian access, water supply. I think Andy mentioned something, hazardous, special, and radioactive materials.
I'm prepared for that one.
Thank you. Floodplain management. We've all had the opportunity to review our site plan review standards. Aside from the question of access for traffic, which I believe Jeff has answered, talking about your plan is to have multiple, am I wrong in calling them vendors?
They'll be calling vendors, yes.
Coming in, dropping off materials, and then parking elsewhere. You don't see that as a problem in terms of restricting traffic, or instead of now having 3 or 4 employees or something being dropped off, now there are more, but...
No, I think that realistically there'll be far less traffic, cars pulling in and out, than there were for the Harbor General Store, where people were running in to get things and running back out again.
And that, in my mind, was what triggered a different use, whereas I would come in and leave.
Right.
This is a little bit different. I don't see any other concerns that I have in the site plan review standards. Do any other members of the board? Okay. Hearing none, then we're just going to go through our findings of fact. And they state that Jeff Curtis is the owner of the property at 10 Commercial Street, and the taxes have been paid in full, and that you're seeking approval for the retail establishment in accordance with Chapter 170, Article 5, subsection 170-61. The board will entertain a motion that Mr. Curtis has demonstrated he's got right title interest in the property as aforementioned.
So moved.
And?
Second.
Great. All in favor of the right title and interest in the property?
Discussion
Oh.
first. Can I just get a nod from Jeff that
Sure.
the taxes have been paid and that
Yes,
everything
they're
is
all
in?
set.
Thanks, I'm ready to vote.
Always do that, thank you. Great. So we've got a motion that's been seconded. All in favor? All right. And then moving on to the site plan review standards. Based on the findings of the fact and the questions that have been answered, we'll entertain a motion that Mr. Curtis has met the criteria set forth in Chapter 170, Article 5, subsection 170-61 for the site plan review standards. Do you have a
So
motion?
moved.
And moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Very good. Do we have any conditions that we would like to attach to this application for approval? Hearing none. Board will entertain a motion that based on the above findings of facts and the plans and supporting information that have been submitted, that we approve the application set forth in front of the board. Motion?
Second.
Second. Any final discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor?
What a lovely
Application's
entrepreneurial
approved.
idea you've had. I hope the publicity gets out. I look forward to
Thanks.
coming down, and I think many folks in this town and
There's
visitors
a lot of
would be
excitement.
very creative.
Thanks.
I would like to echo what John has said. We've had an applicant in front of us, Tom Mayette, that has repurposed 29 McCowan Street, and he's using it as a boardroom that is able to do depositions and have video teleconferencing. It's something that hasn't been done here in the town. Here's something else that hasn't been done in town. I think it's wonderful. I wish you the best of success and
Great idea.
glad to be there.
Applaud you.
And thanks for your patience staying around.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Sorry about the fee.
But the town needs the money.
Okay. Moving along. Can we please go next to Tootsie Enterprises and the property located at 93 Townsend Avenue. Who's representing tonight?
I'm Allison Evans.
Hi, Allison.
And my husband Chris and I propose to live there and to have our ceramic shop there. We'll have retail in the front and we'll be making the work in the back. We're going to have one rentable apartment above alongside where we'll be living.
Okay.
And I guess we're asking to change the use. It used to be a restaurant.
The board can agree that this is a change in use?
Yes. So we're asking for approval of that, first of all.
Okay.
And I don't know. What else?
So you have, the first floor is going to be studio,
Yes.
and the second floor is your living quarters, and then the third story is an efficiency, correct?
No, the
No.
second and third story will be out where we live, and there'll be a little piece carved out of the second floor that will be an efficiency apartment.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the product that you're selling and how do you envision clients, customers, who's going to be buying?
Who's going to be buying? Well, I've been making this line of work for over 10 years. I started making it in East Boothbay, and I've basically established a business that is primarily wholesale. I go to trade shows and I sell my work to stores, and then we box it up and we ship it out. And we have a production facility and gallery down in Yarmouth already, where we're doing this now. We have employees down there that are doing it. Originally, we were going to try to live down there, but it hasn't been working out, and this building just sort of looked like exactly like what we might need to in order to figure out how to live and work in sort of the same spot. So it seemed like the obvious solution to our long commute from Boothbay to Yarmouth for the past 4 years. We plan on keeping that as our main production facility, using this as more of a showroom, gallery, and
But not much in the way of retail walk-up sorts of.
you know what, our retail, one of the reasons we wanted to open up another retail space is because our largest growing customer is walk-in traffic.
Oh.
However, 90% of our business is, we ship it out. So, we have FedEx trucks and basically FedEx trucks coming to pick up product from us on a daily basis out of Yarmouth, probably not so much up here. I have no idea what to expect as far as, customers coming and going. In Yarmouth, it's a good day if we have 3 or 4 customers come in.
Oh.
So, I mean, I don't expect a huge amount of traffic, but we'll see. I mean, I have no idea what to expect. Because, it's very specific what we make, it's pottery. We're gonna be selling, some other things, some furniture and other things that kind of go alongside of, home sort of goods that will accent what we make. And I do wanna grow the line to make other home fixtures. I'm starting to make sinks and lighting and stuff like that, so.
It's a
sort of-
factory, we're approving a
It's
factory.
it's a factory. Yes, I made 6 sinks so far, yeah. No, it's all pretty much, it's not really a factory.
How many employees do you envisage working here?
Right now in Yarmouth, we have 3 full-time people.
Would they remain in Yarmouth or move up
Yep,
here?
2 of them will remain there. He
I
will.
won't
He
have
will.
to drive there anymore.
He won't have to go there anymore. Yeah, that'll be good. We'll both be going down there a little bit here and there. But up here, I think we'll have both of us will be running the shop, and I anticipate having one more a retail, front of the house person to kind of take care of customers, and then a part-time person in the back helping us make things. So I guess it's like 3.5 positions to start.
Do you have any off-street parking?
Do I have off? I do. I can squeeze in 8 spots. And I have to pay attention to, there's a right-of-way there that I have to keep open. But, I think we could squeeze in 8, and that's all that's possible.
Jeff, you don't see, or do you see any parking or traffic issue?
No. I think that the site is limited, and I think that they've made the most of what space they have. And I think that if anything is to succeed on that lot, it will require some adjustment to the parking requirements. So I think that they're doing the best considering what they expect for traffic.
That's pretty tight, what you've drawn there.
It is
It's
really
okay
good.
for compact cars, but.
Well, I did it with, those are, it's measured out with, the number, but I can't remember now.
9 by 18.
Yeah, so they will fit if.
Yeah,
but you'd have to
with, I'm
really-
thinking of some of the people I know
The
who
trucks.
drive and backing in and out of parking lots. I
Like
wouldn't
Don
want
Bean's,
my
my
car to stay there all
contractor's
day.
truck, have you seen that thing? That thing, that takes up like 3 spaces.
And you do have, I saw on the drawing that there was going to be a kiln room.
Yes.
And how will that, as far as safety goes with the rentable space? The person having an apartment, are they, going to be living over a ticking time bomb? or-
No, they're not. Well, first of all, there's a kind of an addition on the side of the building where the original kitchen for the restaurant was, and that's what we're using as a very large, roomy kiln room, which it's not gonna be completely filled with kilns. It's just, we're gonna keep the structure as it is. Half of it is actually made out of concrete blocks. The rest of it is, we're gonna be having to put in 2 layers of sheetrock to meet the fire marshal's requests. And actually, we don't need to do that on the whole thing, but because the building is sprinkled and because that room is sprinkled, we've, just like other folks have been able to, there are less regulations as far as how things need to be to keep.
Yeah, just didn't know if you were going to have, rows of kilns in there. or-
We will have probably 3 kilns in there. They're electric, they're hooked up to a computer, they turn off at the drop of it. If anything goes wrong, they're so safe. I've lived with them in my garage for years. They're very, very safe.
Will the lights go dim across the peninsula when you turn the kilns on, or do you already have adequate amperage there at the site?
We definitely already have adequate amperage, yeah.
And disposal of, let's say, scrap, and will there be any outside storage of raw material?
No, we won't have any raw material outside. I mean, residential garbage can, maybe 1 or 2 of them. We're not
Not
gonna be.
2 or 3 large
No,
dumpsters.
we're not gonna have dumpsters.
I've got a question. On your sketch number 3, you have a note on top, says apparently you're planning on building a canopy over the front door. It sticks out 3 feet.
Yes,
Is that true?
yes,
So that canopy will stick out over the sidewalk.
yes.
Is that a problem in terms of exceeding the site and the setbacks? I mean, it's technically over public property then.
Not
Well,
really.
no, that property owns some of the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Like
we
many
own-
properties in town do. There's a portion of the sidewalk which is within the lot boundaries. Are
So
there
we don't have a-
setback
we don't have a-
considerations? Probably. That's up to you guys to decide whether you're comfortable with that or not.
I think what we need to see is a plot plan. We need to see a survey of the property and show the sidewalk and show how much you're going to extend this canopy to see whether it's within your property or in fact extending over on public property.
Will it be a fixed canopy, or will it be a, kind of canvas?
I didn't want to do canvas. The only reason I really am requesting this is because all of the doors that we want to put on the front of the building the warranty won't, if there's no coverage, the warranty doesn't, you can't.
Are they exterior doors?
Yeah,
Yeah, if
even
I'm not
exterior doors.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a canvas canopy there.
There is a
Or
canvas
is
canopy
now.
there.
Right.
If I were to guess, in my opinion, I don't see a lot of difference, quite frankly. I don't see a lot of impact, frankly, on pedestrians there. If it's high enough up, I don't know, you're probably be much less affected by the canopy, which brushes
Well,
my head.
except I would want to make a condition on approving that it be freestanding, no posts
Yes.
coming up
I
from
think
the...
that's what she's trying.
It's what the drawing implies, but it's worth stipulating explicitly.
Yeah.
And that was our plan, we didn't want to have anything sticking out.
I can just speak from prior familiarity with the site, that area in front of 93 Townsend is one of the larger sidewalks in Boothbay Harbor. I have commonly driven up and left a scooter in front and left more than 4 feet of access of space around. So that is while I don't have the specific dimension, it is a rather wide sidewalk. And Jeff does correctly mention that there was an awning that did extend out 3 feet before that was used in prior uses
Right, I'm
as
aware of
well. So that, what it's worth, my familiarity. Just for the board's reference, the parking requirements, they're 2 spaces per dwelling. So we've got the efficiency, which needs 2 spaces, their residence, which needs 2, and then it's 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So roughly it works out to somewhere in the neighborhood of around a total of 14 spaces that are needed. Allison has demonstrated that she's got 8, and she also mentions the ability to deal with Ronnie Babcock. Wasn't that for possible
Yes.
rental of spaces?
Yep.
And there is, while this isn't part of the downtown A business district that doesn't have the parking requirements, there is on-street parking.
Yeah, there is street parking.
That is available.
Yep.
So I just mentioned that for the board's consideration. Do employees have to get paid?
Only sometimes.
Do you envision that these 8 parking spaces, they would be accessible off Townsend, right?
Yes.
Not off Union Street?
Right, and that was one of the other things that I wanted to talk about. Are we there at the closing off Union Street?
Sure.
Move to that. That is it's kind of everybody's secret way to get to the bakery or to people cut through there constantly, and I understand, it was, abandoned, or it was a restaurant, or it was other things before, but with us living there, small kid, maybe another one, who knows, it just seems like kind of a dangerous, and it's just steep and it's falling apart, and so we were hoping to close that off, and that will help us gain the parking. That the only way that we could gain those 2 spots would be by raising that up and essentially kind of continuing the way it looks now, like, placing stones along the bottom, just like below the arborvitae trees. having very similar sort of look.
Whose property is that, Joe?
The property behind,
No, the area being talked about off Union Street.
off of Union where the driveway comes out.
Yeah, so why would we object?
We wouldn't.
So I wasn't sure if that was something that I needed to, I mean, there was something that was brought up to me that maybe there would be an issue with access for fire department or things like that, but I know that nobody has any concern with that because it's totally accessible.
Fire truck couldn't make that corner.
Yeah, exactly, a truck couldn't be, nobody, I mean, most cars bottom out on it, so, I don't know, I wasn't sure if that was something that I needed to talk to you about.
Okay, great.
I have another question.
Yes.
On this plan, what is this area right here?
What number you got?
That's a deck,
That's a deck.
yes.
Do you need that as part of your business?
No, it's my backyard.
I know, it
Oh,
exists.
oh,
But I wonder
It's
if
my outdoor space.
it's your outdoor space.
That'll be my above ground garden.
Let's see. There's a, under the notes that have been dropped off here, we've got signage. Letter C, it talks about approval of your logo on the side of the building.
I already know that's not allowed. Because, yeah, I understand, that's
Sure.
fine. It was just a creative thought, but I understand that anything directly on the side of the building is not okay.
Great logo. Put it on a sign and attach the sign to the side of the building.
I know, I
That's
know, I
allowed.
could, I know, that takes more work.
Oh.
But I can do that.
Asphalt removal, Jeff, is that us? Is that Public Works in that front corner? Or is that their property and they do as they wish?
Yeah, I mean, any sort of curb cuts or those types of things need to go through.
This is shown on page 5. It's this radius here.
That wasn't something I was gonna be concerned about.
Oh, okay.
Put it that way.
Okay. All right.
No problem.
Does the board have any other general questions? Great. Do we have any abutters with any questions or comments? Hearing or seeing none? This is great, thank you. It's a terrific application. Things are nicely laid out and numbered. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, good.
With that in mind, if I can get myself organized, let me we'll go through our findings of fact towards approving the application. Oh, there was a question about some materials being displayed in front of
Yes.
the business.
Yes, there was.
Unnumbered, but.
Yes, okay, that was something that I wanted I know that there's been issues in the past about people putting things in front of their building.
They're aesthetically pleasing. You're not going to put for sale signs on them, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I wanted to put, in a perfect world, I would love to make the whole front of that building have planters and have beautiful lush, greenery in planters in front of it. But I don't know if that's something that is, I own 5 feet on one side of the sidewalk and 2 feet on the other side, so I figure I can, but I just wanted to kind of get it out there because I know that I've heard that people sometimes get upset about things being put on the sidewalk.
Well, that might be a good reason to get the survey, because if it's your property, put what you want there in terms of plants and things, and whether it's paved or not, you have the right to use it.
How does the board want to, handle that? Because we know it's been stated that the applicant's property extends beyond the face of the building a certain amount. And I'm sensing that the board feels it's not a problem for her to put whatever material she has on her property.
Right, but if it goes over, it'd be a code violation, and that would be
You just
something
can't
Jeff
have
would
any
address.
retail sales on public property.
Yep.
So you'll need to, yeah, I I mean, you could just approve it with the condition that
Right.
they demonstrate to the code office where the boundaries are and that all retail sales go within those boundaries.
Right.
So you're saying examples of your work could
These-
be out there?
No, these are not even examples of my work. These are planters that I wanna,
What happened?
yeah, they're planters that I would, I
Oh,
mean,
just-
I am thinking about possibly selling, you know, having them available to people, but they're not things that I make. They're something that, they're made out of resin and stone, and they're just really cool, and they're weather hardy, and I think that they're awesome.
So I guess what I was saying, you could put one of these planters in front of your building,
Yeah.
put a nice flower inside of it,
Yes.
and that would look beautiful when people would say, gosh, that's really great, and come into your store and go, where do I get one of those? And you could say, well, I've got one back
Or
here.
I've got a catalog, because I
Yeah,
won't, they're,
yeah.
I wouldn't be able to.
But that wouldn't be selling per se from public property.
We're really talking about landscaping rather
Yeah,
than.
it becomes more of a landscaping issue,
Well,
which
yeah.
would be great.
But if it's within their property, is there any reason they could not put effectively what are Sam is, as long as they're not hanging for sale signs?
I don't think so. I think, no, I don't think there's any problem with that. I think that you'd want to have a pretty clear understanding as a board as to how extensive that sale might be. But yeah, I think based on that, if she wanted to sell some planters or pots, I can't see there being any problem with that.
I just think the face of that building needs a little green.
Oh, this, yeah. So this is your concept here. to be
Isn't that
commended.
beautiful?
It is.
That's what I'm, and I am thinking about, you know, maybe planting herbs, you know, like lettuce and things, you know, just usable, pretty things. I don't know.
As
Green it
long
up.
as you're not letting people come by and make their own lettuce, because then you need a victualer's license. You're going to have a different street.
Well, I don't know, the rabbits will love you, it'll never get to market.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none. Let's go through our findings of fact. And that states that the owner, Fritzy Enterprises LLC, is the owner of the property at 93 Townsend, that the taxes for the premises have been paid on full, that this is in the downtown business zoning district, letter B, and that this is for approval of a retail establishment in accordance with Chapter 170, Article 5, subsection 170-61. Is there a motion that?
Does that cover the kiln, the manufacturer, or does that need to be slightly reworded?
This is just right title and interest. Oh, this is just right title. So, based on the information presented, we'll entertain a motion that the applicant has right title and interest in the property.
So,
And
second.
Second, great. Jeff, the taxes have been paid in full?
Yes, they have.
Great. Any discussion? Hearing
Yes.
none? Yes, discussion?
Yes. I'm still concerned with the canopy, only to the extent that I don't think we have the authority to approve something that causes a code violation.
Well, this is just right title and interest we're looking at.
We're just voting on whether they have the right title and interest to bring this application to the board.
Oh,
That'll come up in the next.
We're 2 minutes away from that.
well, I thought we were going to combine those. Okay, sorry. Forget I said that.
Okay.
I'll say it later.
Hearing now no other discussion, all in favor of right title and interest? Great. Moving along to site plan review standards. Based on the testimony information presented to the board, we'll entertain a motion that the applicants have demonstrated this proposal meets the criteria set forth in Chapter 170, Article 5, subsection 170-61 of ordinance. Is there a motion? And second?
Second.
Great. Discussion.
I reiterate my comment. I would have proposed an amendment to the motion that says that they be allowed to use their property for display, landscaping, and that no portion of the building extension, if they chose to do it, exceeds the property line.
May I suggest that we make that as a condition of approval?
Yes.
Great. And the condition would be,
Let's be technically correct here, you mean an appurtenance that's attached to the building?
Yes.
What was discussed earlier was freestanding. So you're only concerned about what is attached to the building?
Well, there were really two things. One was their proposed extension or a canopy, and the second was the use of what appears to be public sidewalk, but is in fact their own property, and they make it clear that they have the right
As long as they don't extend out to the public sidewalk, whether it's attached or freestanding,
Yes.
is not relevant.
Okay.
So they'd have their choice.
So,
Further discussion would raise the question of grandfathering here. If previous owners have been allowed a portico that extends beyond the property line, is there a grandfather issue?
And that's a great question.
Does
I
it
think
still
it
exist?
comes down to increasing the nonconformity of the structure. And so if there's an existing awning there and it goes to the property line, obviously nobody can permit it to go past that property line.
Right.
But if it goes to the property line, then if you were to ask my opinion, I would suggest that you're not increasing the nonconformity by allowing one that is free, that is not placed
what I
on the
thought.
sidewalk and does not go past the property line.
so condition would be the awning or portico or entrance coverway is to not make the structure any more non-conforming and not to exceed the edge of the property line.
I think that would be fair.
Okay. That'll come under our conditions section.
That works.
Okay, great.
Do you have any problem with that?
Okay. Hearing no additional discussion, we have a motion to approve the application for site plan review standards as submitted. All in favor? Great.
What's the condition?
Now, condition. Jeff, did you get the condition, or?
I think we're gonna work on the wording right now.
Okay. Do you want to come up with that, or shall we?
I would just say, after reviewing whether the proposed roof above the entrance increases the nonconformity, the board rules that as long as it does not exceed the property line, it does not increase the nonconformity. Yeah.
Okay.
Sound reasonable?
That's
Done.
Do I have a motion to approve that condition and a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor of the condition? Terrific. Finally, based on the conditions and all the findings of facts and supporting documentation, we'll entertain a motion that the applicant has met the criteria set forth for this application's approval. Moved.
Yes, second.
Second. All in favor? Congratulations.
And you're bringing a business from Yarmouth up to Lincoln County and specifically Boothbay Harbor. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Welcome to Boothbay Harbor. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
We might finally have a business at 93 Townsend that will,
Is sustainable.
yes.
Yeah, it will be, it will be. We can be anywhere and still make a living, which is good.
Thank you for your time.
Sure. Have you guys ever considered doing you know how they do the painting, a night out painting?
Yes, paint your own pottery stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone always thinks that we should do that, but it's not really my thing.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, it's really a smart business, but.
They're doing a painting thing over the Rock Tide coming up.
Oh,
It's
cool.
on Living Social.
Oh, very cool.
Okay. Somebody find me the paperwork, the application for Mr. No, thank you. Great. Let's go ahead and hear the application for Dan McNutt and 1 Howard Street.
Hi, I'm Chris Graham. This is my fiancée, Michelle Green. Dan could not be here tonight. We're seeking the board's approval for a restaurant at 1 Howard Street named Mel's Place. Currently it is a coffee shop. We're seeking the board's approval for change of use from a small coffee shop to a small Neapolitan brick oven pizza shop. Our inspiration comes from Michelle's mother, Melody. They grew up together cooking, making fantastic food their entire lives. She took me in around 2007. I was living with them, learning their ways. And unfortunately, we lost Melody in 2012 unexpectedly. It was always their dream to one day open up a small bakery, cafe, bistro, some sort of restaurant to call their own. With Melody's passing, we picked up the torch and decided that we have to move forward with this. I've always been in construction, always a hard hat, lunch pail kind of guy, and I've never had any passion in my kind of work. Getting in the kitchen with those two girls, I can tell you, I found and I developed my passion. Melody touched many people in many different ways. We've been perfecting our pizza recipes for close to 3 to 4 years now, and we feel it's some of the best that you'll ever try. Honestly, we were looking at homes in Boothbay Harbor this past winter. We were planning on becoming first-time home buyers. Every time we've come up to Boothbay Harbor, and your mom always talked about it, every time we came up here, we felt like it was a big hug from the community and that this was the right place to be and where we've always wanted to be. It's been our destination for 5 years now. This past fall, we moved up to Maine. We're staying at our father's place at Phippsburg for the time being. We were looking at houses. We were close to closing on a house in the Edgecombe area until we saw the for lease sign. We walked into the restaurant, we met Dan, we looked at the layout, the numbers, the seats, and we said this is what we've had in our head the entire time. A few small renovations to the interior, namely just an oven. We can turn it from a current coffee shop into a pizza shop with very, very limited footprint to the community.
Are we blocking any streets?
No blocking of streets. We're not touching any sidewalks. We're not operating too far outside of the footprint that the coffee shop was in.
Great. Let me ask a question. I remember going into the Moosehead Coffee and getting a sandwich, getting an omelet.
Yep.
Has it been closed for more than a year?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So we can't refund your money. And we can't consider this an existing use.
I wasn't expecting it, so that's.
Sure. I think Jeff Curtis would come back and haunt us. Does the board have any questions for Chris or Michelle?
I have one. If I understood what you said you felt that the community gave you a hug when you came here. That's wonderful to hear, and to see younger folks like you come into our community is just wonderful.
Thank you, thank you.
I love it here.
It's a magical place, so welcome. That in mind, if we have no other questions, anything from any abutters? Hearing or seeing none?
I ran out of the butters.
Yeah. Let's go through our findings of fact. We're going to say that the applicants are representing the owner, that the taxes have been paid in full, and they're seeking approval for a restaurant in accordance with Chapter 170, Article 5, subsection 170-61. Based on this information, I'll entertain a motion that the applicants have the right title and interest in the property in question. And second. Great. Any discussion? Tax has been paid? Thank you. All in favor, right title and interest? Great. Site plan review standards. Based on the testimony that's been submitted, the information we've received, we'll entertain a motion that the applicants have demonstrated that their proposal meets our criteria set forth in Section 170, Chapter 170, Article 5, subsection 170-61. Motion?
Are we still going to discuss some of those?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, and not at all. I don't think this is necessarily an issue, but with recent concerns about wood-fired smoke in downtown Boothbay, I think it is worth mentioning the exhaust system, where they're going to exhaust it to, what they have for a plan for that. Not saying, I just want to get it out there because I'm sure it will concern someone.
Thanks for putting that out there. Hold that thought. Can you talk to us a bit about how you're setting up?
Yep, our wood-fired oven is not a very large one. Some you'll see on TV are as big as 6 feet tall and can hold as many as 12 pizzas at a time. Ours will be doing it about roughly 5 at a time. It's only going to be about 3 feet tall, so it's actually going to be on a slabbed countertop. As far as the smoke and the ventilation, we do have 10-inch duct, which we can tap into currently under fire code. And as far as where the smoke's going to go, we're going to chimney it to the top of the building, which is roughly 35 feet straight up, and we're on a hill. The smoke that comes out of the exhaust system is very, very minimal. The temperature inside of our oven is over 1,000 degrees at some points. It's very well insulated. There's no grease produced from it, even if you're cooking other items. So the smoke that comes out of the top is very, very minimal. But our plan is, initially, we need to speak with our mason and also the fire department to confirm that it's up to code, that as long as we can tap into the 10-inch duct, we can bring it straight to the top
Is
of the
it-
exterior of the building.
Sorry, is it a new oven or a used oven?
It will be a new oven. It needs to be put together in increments to dry and to cure. But it'll be coming in modular from New Hampshire.
So I would imagine that it meets all the OSHA requirements.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's actually through a company called Forno Bravo. I think I have a spec sheet somewhere. They're the world's #1 producer of wood-fired ovens.
Jeff, for the board's information, the oven that was used at Mine Oyster, is that a wood-fired oven? Was that a wood smoker? What was?
It's a wood-fired grill.
It's a wood-fired grill. And the grill is, sounds to me like a grill is a bit different.
It sounds like there's certainly a.
In any event, fire marshal would have to approve.
Yeah, I would assume the fire marshal would have to approve
So
those
that's
things.
not our
And again,
concern.
not being an authority on wood-fired grills by any means, I really rely on their expertise to be able to provide you with some of that information. I don't know, for instance, are there filters required on those things? I know some of that was a concern, that perhaps.
But that would be
Mine
something
Oysters
the
was
fire
not
marshal
adequately filtered.
would
It was
consider.
demonstrated that it was, but it might just be something worth mentioning, so that.
Let me ask a question again. We don't need to consider that. Is that correct?
I think that all those things will be subject to fire marshal approval and something I can handle on the code enforcement.
Okay.
I think that you're primarily taking care of the use and if there will be any impacts to the neighbors associated with fume, smoke, and those.
And
kinds of
would
things.
there be a requirement for environmental testing on it? You know, I mean,
The Department of Environmental Protection has the Bureau of Air Quality. They recently came down. Certainly their job is to monitor things which are perceived to be in violation of emission standards. Again, I think that goes back to the installation of adequate filtering, those types of things, and I'm sure that there are manufacturers' recommendations with this being a new stove, grill, what am I talking about?
Oven.
Oven.
I think there's an important distinction in terms of the quality, the air quality.
Absolutely. All I was suggesting was
with
that
a
I'm
grill,
sure
you
the
get food
manufacturer has.
fumes mixing with the effluent and the smoke. With an oven, you get essentially the wood-burning products.
The oven the big difference is with the grill, the fire is below the food, cooking the food, thus you get the grease vapors, you get the smoke, and everything is traveling up at once. Our oven is completely domed, almost like an igloo, to a point where it's about 3.5 feet wide, circular the entire way, but the opening to it is literally this big. It's enough for our pizza peel to get in and out with one pizza. Everything is self-contained in that one dome. The chimney's right on top, and you just tell the chimney where to take the smoke. There's been lots of testing through the National Fire Councils as far as people who cook chicken wings inside of these ovens now. A big concern was the grease that chicken often produces. There's been lots and lots of testing. I think Michigan was the last one to do it. Where actually we could cook chicken inside this oven and we do not get the grease vapors due to the temperature of the oven at the top of the chimney. So we can get a filter if need be, if there is ever a problem with the smell of any type of smoke, but typically with these ovens, there's very, very little maintenance required.
And I think that wood grill is also a power vent. There was some type of fan ducting, so that was additional
They
blowing.
usually need blowers at the top and bottom.
Yeah, where yours won't be having a blower, it'll just be naturally convected.
Yep.
Okay.
Physics.
So that is a difference. Running out of tapes. Let's see, you are in, let's see, what's our location again here?
Downtown Business B.
Yeah, downtown Business B, so there is a parking requirement. Talk about the parking. There is some limited existing parking that you have?
There is, but they're owned by, Dan has tenants off the back side of the building. There's a few renovated apartments which are for the tenants. We noticed that the Moose Head Coffee Shop, they had an exemption for their parking. Also, we had talked to Jeff briefly about whether it was a sign, anything that's included on our website, our mobile website, and our menu. We'll remind people to please use the municipal lots. The downtown harbor is, such a walking friendly downtown and to not use the post office parking and the library parking lots.
Walking indeed. We do have 2 municipal lots on either side. There is some, how does the board feel about the parking standard as it applies to this?
How many parking spaces would be required under the ordinance?
How many square feet is the restaurant?
It's 1,000 almost on the nose.
Now, is that the total or is that the retail, the seating?
That is the total first floor, the entire plan that we have on the first floor.
Including the kitchen?
Including kitchen, yes.
So 9 per 1,000 square feet, or 1 per 3 seats, depending on how the board wants to interpret.
Okay, one per 3 seats.
You're going to have at least 3 seats?
Yes, absolute maximum will be 35. That might be on the high end of things once we start getting chairs in there.
35.
I've never seen a parking issue when the Moosehead was in full operation.
No, my concern was, the Moosehead not so much, because that was sort of a walk-in, but pizzas, especially where maybe it's a longer term, people will go there for a longer period of time, and I know parking is, the municipal lot really fills up, and the library is already short on parking.
And then there's there's the paid lot, Sewell's, behind, and then there's the parking metered lot right by the post office.
There is the 2-hour parking
Right.
down here as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of your business will be after normal business hours, I would assume. How late are you going to stay open?
We're planning about 9 o'clock
Yeah.
maximum. We're going to offer a very fast, casual, quick service. It was the only restaurant segment to grow in 2013, and with our oven, it takes us 90 seconds to make a pizza. So if you order, you should have your pizza within 3 minutes. As opposed to waiting for
a
15.
drive-up window?
No.
So that means people coming in are going to have to park.
Yeah.
I just know parking in that area is very tight, but I don't know if we have any options here in terms of,
I think it's incumbent on us to discuss it. I don't necessarily see if there was a previous business before and others around that are operating, that we can hold them to a different standard.
right.
And especially because we do offer municipal parking.
Where are you going to park?
We're actually going to be renting the apartment that just became available upstairs from the apartment.
Does that include parking?
Yeah, we're going to have one of those renters spots in the back of the building.
A logical question that suggests itself is, do we repent of our previous waiver? I mean, what was the rationale for exempting them in the previous instance, and do we regret that for any reason? I don't think we have a resident old person here who can tell us the history of the...
And I honestly don't think it matters. I don't think that you should be looking at this as anything but a fresh application. That said, it's up to the board to determine whether they feel.
No, just the reasoning would have been interesting to know.
Oh, I understand. I just
Viable
don't.
alternative, I mean, do we just let it kind of collapse into dust, the building? Because, any business that goes in there would have the same problem, and there's no alternative as far as obtaining parking.
Even if it were turned into a residence.
Yeah, short of, digging underneath or building on top and, parking on the sky level.
And the public lots are relatively close.
They're very close, abutted.
Very close.
Yeah, I mean, there's substantial residential and commercial development in that block, and it is, for whatever reason, just been pushed just outside that area where parking isn't an issue.
I will go on record unpopularly saying, if our biggest problem is that we don't have enough parking spots, I'll welcome that as a problem, rather than not enough businesses and people willing to invest in the town.
It's also our goal to purchase the building at the end of our 1-year lease from Dan, which we would love to, reevaluate the topic of parking, because there's space to be had off the back of that lot.
And the bakery that just went in alongside,
Capers?
where do they park?
Stacy?
I mean, it's the same problem, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
So,
So,
I don't think that we can make these poor people martyrs.
I'm getting the sense at the board, while we've discussed parking,
Yeah.
we can't seem to draw any other conclusion other than to move forward with things as they
Are you going to have any employees?
Yeah, we're going to have 3 to start. We're looking to source them from local culinary programs, whether it's students in the high school with a culinary passion, anybody in the colleges already. It was big for her mom to always pay it forward and give back as much as you can. We've started a small scholarship and grant in her name. So hopefully those culinary students, we can take care of their knives, their books, their uniforms, things like that for them, and really give them a foundation and a great springboard as a first step into the culinary arts. I know I wish I had that when I was 17, 18 years old instead of
I
shoveling
was
dishes.
really thinking more about where employees are going to park, because some businesses are very good about ensuring that their employees don't park in patron spaces, and some retail and are not very good about it. And the employees get there and take the prime, customer spaces. So
There's no patron
I'm not sure there's
spaces per se.
much we can do about that, except encourage you to make sure they don't park.
That is something we've discussed to start. I think that's going to be a little bit too much to bite off. Come the fall, once we have a steady month or two worth of sales underneath us, and we can evaluate the insurance, the liability end of that. It's an undertaking, but it's one that, for all intents and purposes, the Peninsula doesn't have a delivery option right now, and we would love to fill that market share.
I would suggest, and I don't know whether it's worth conditioning or just suggesting and asking nicely, but that deliveries be done on Howard Street, not on Oak. Oak is tough and difficult, particularly in the summertime. Yeah, and I don't know what size deliveries you're anticipating having, but as I'm sure Stacy can talk to you next door, it's difficult when a truck is there, and if there's any traffic at all.
Funny, we've
touchy
seen her Cisco trucks come by every now and again. We don't envision having.
It's just a tough location. So.
We don't envision having a Cisco or a PFG account. We're going to be working mainly with local farmers markets. Yeah, there's no parking posted all over the place on the street.
So it's like I said, just a suggestion, just to avoid any issues. It's just a tough corner there.
For sure.
In the spirit of trying to find a pathway to the answer yes, what's our authority for exempting them? We're set up here to apply the ordinances that have been written, and if we start saying, oh, we like you, so we're going to exempt this, but the next applicant we're hard on, what is the rationale for saying that in this case we see no practical way of performing this business unless we exempt them?
There's nearby on-street parking, there are city lots available, etc., spaces on the property itself.
Well, I understand the rationale, I just don't understand the process that we're authorized to employ. I didn't know the planning board is authorized to exempt based on common sense.
Oh, no, I don't know that we're exempting. I would stipulate there is adequate parking, in that you've got off-street parking.
That's an interesting interpretation.
You've got public lots, you've got paid lots, and there is parking on premises.
Well, there isn't parking on premises, except for the tenants.
Well, yeah, but you're counting that in the numbers of parking spaces being required.
More spaces than there are tenants.
Well, I think one way that we can justify this is the fact that as a restaurant, their hours of operation are off from the normal business day, and the demand for parking drops off after probably 4 in the afternoon, which is when hopefully you'll be busier.
Should be 65 to 70% of our business.
And if you go to
Common sense cries out for an exemption here.
You got that window there also.
I think it depends on how you want to interpret it and how creative you want to be. I understand exactly what you're saying, that the ordinance says it must comply with the parking requirements of this table. And there is, of course, that mysterious other use on our use table, which does give you the freedom to determine what those parking needs are.
Right, if
So
only they
while
were
restaurants
another use.
are more pigeonholed, there is one section of that ordinance which gives you the ability to interpret that, so.
But they don't fall into that.
No, but you could make a reasonable argument that this particular space is unusable without considering some of these things, and make that determination, and the process for appeal by somebody that's concerned is always open. And at
How
that
about
point you
John's
go-
point? Have they demonstrated there is adequate parking by virtue of the parking on other property around them close by?
Well, I think that they've determined that there's adequate parking. I don't think that there's a question there. I think that the ordinance says that there needs to be off-street parking, and I don't know whether that needs to be on the lot or not. And so some of that is gonna be on Oak Street, some of that's gonna be on different areas. I think those things are hard to determine. I think that you just need to go with your gut and frankly run the appeal of run the risk of taking this to the appeals board if somebody were to consider this to be worthy of an appeal.
Under the parking standards of subsection 170-50, it says, letter I, numbered required, off-street parking spaces shall be provided to conform to the number required in the following schedule. And there certainly are off-street parking spaces that are provided. I can't sit here and suppose when those lots may or may not be filled, but I can certainly say that they are provided for, and that does meet the standard.
They're provided for and also competed for.
I think that you make a very good point, though, about their peak hours of operation. And I think we can look at the parking lots' peak hours of operation, and they should be emptying when they're most needed by these guys. So I don't consider it to be a problem. But again, I haven't heard anybody come to me since this was publicized and ask about the business or present any objection to it, or coming to even ask to look at the application. I don't think this is at the forefront of anybody's concern. And again, some of these situations I think are going to have to be just addressed by means of approval if you feel that it is adequate. And again, take it to the appeals board if somebody does feel the need to appeal it.
Well, and maybe what needs to be looked at as well is relook at the zoning, the downtown zoning to creep it out a bit.
It is something that could be considered.
That was Chris Swanson who made that.
Yes.
All comments can be directed, all death threats can be forwarded to Chris.
But to answer you, Andy, I don't have a
point.
good answer. I don't think it's.
No, but you've provided context and I'm grateful, thank you.
Yeah. Well, we beat this up on parking. Do I get the sense that the board, while understands that the business doesn't have physical parking spaces to provide, the board feels that in light of the business and the proximity to off-street parking, that we are not going to make further parking conditions an issue. Am I correct in hearing that?
I agree.
Great. No plan on hazardous, special, or radioactive materials, right?
No radioactive pizzas from us.
Okay. Any other topics for discussion? on
Just
this
trash
item?
removal?
Yes.
Yep, we have a plan in place for that. We're going to be following the footsteps of a few of the zero-footprint pizzerias in the country right now. They compost as much as they possibly can to local farmers. That's going to be step one for us. Step two, everything we use that gets thrown away will be recyclable. We've been in contact with Giles on Route 27. They said whenever we want to set up a pickup schedule, they'll come by, drop us off with some prices. Step three is what's left over is trash. We're hoping it is absolutely nothing. Given we will have something, we do have 3 50-gallon barrels with wheels and locking tops. We also have a small deck area off the back of our kitchen where those can be stored. Can't be accessed by anybody else.
Basically outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely outside.
Okay. I think that does it. Well, moving forward then, the board will entertain a motion that the applicants have demonstrated that their proposal meets our criteria set forth in Chapter 170, Article 5, subsection 170-61.
So moved.
Great. And a second. Great. All in favor of application as submitted?
Question, I guess. Do we need to clarify our rationale on the parking? have it in the record, or will you cover that?
It's already covered on tape.
I mean, just to
It
say.
is true, that's an internal decision for you guys to make. I'm happy to put it down in the findings of fact, and you guys can sign away to it, that's absolutely fine. Again, it is a permanent record, this thing's gonna be locked away, and anybody can come and watch this, or review this tape, or read the minutes, but absolutely, if you'd like to put it in there, and just to include your rationale, so that the decision from the planning board, that if it is to be appealed, will have some basis, it's probably not a bad idea.
That's great pickup. And that won't be a condition, that'll just be part of the findings of fact.
Well, we do have this section, if the criteria have not been met, the reasons are explained below, we'll sort of put that in under commentary.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Very good.
Do you want to try to word that now, before we get too far ahead?
Sure. I'll take a stab at it. Let me state that the applicant has demonstrated that due to the
Availability.
I was going to say, the nature of their business and the physical layout of their, of the property, that owned parking spaces are not available. However,
Hold on.
Limited.
Okay, layout of the property, continue on from there.
due to the layout of the property, that identified parking space, or not identified, but allocated. Available parking spaces.
Cannot be provided.
Yeah, cannot be provided on the property. And then we can say therefore.
It's the board's judgment,
Yeah, but due to the proximity of public parking, walkability from the downtown area, and their
Municipal
off-peak
hours
of operation, the board feels that adequate parking will be available.
And the criteria is met.
Yes.
We've seen it all tonight, haven't we? This is a good one.
Let's not forget to sign the sheets this time. Oh, we haven't actually voted on the final motion.
Good.
I said the applicant has demonstrated that due to the nature of their business and the layout of the property, parking cannot be created on the property, but due to proximity to public parking and to downtown, and considering peak hours of operation, the parking requirements have been met.
Perfect. Good. Okay, so there's a motion. All in favor of the applicant meeting the criteria with explanation included? All in favor? None opposed. And finally, based on the findings of facts and the supporting information, we'll entertain a motion the application should be approved for the reasons set forth. And second. Any final discussion? None? All in favor? Congratulations.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your patience.
Oh, no problem. We were actually late to the party.
Yes. Just so you two know, my coworker at the Register, Susie Thayer, will be calling to read an article about your, we'd love to do a write-up on your new business, so she'll be contacting you.
Awesome, fantastic.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
Great. When do you plan on opening doors?
We're hoping for middle of June. Hoping.
Our funding, we just got the green light from Coastal Enterprises. They typically do not like restaurants, but they had us in, they like our ideas, our numbers and everything, and we got the green light from them, so the dominoes have just begun to fall.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Good. So yeah, hopefully some point in June,
We'll have some pizza for you
we're
guys.
cooking for everybody.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Considering the...
I'll get you a signed copy with the
considering the lateness of the hour.
Right? Yep, good. Thanks.
Yeah, considering the lateness of the hour, is there any other topics the board wants to discuss this evening? Hearing and seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Great, all in favor? Thanks.
Are we turned off?